Hey guys, welcome to the Black Ibis Social Club. My name is Alexandra. I'm your host, and we're having a beautiful but exceptionally rainy day here in South Carolina. So if the show cuts out or there's some weird editing, that's because thunder destroyed my internet. Otherwise, I wanted to apologize to everybody that we missed a week last week. Unfortunate incidents happened. Fisto, what's up, Fisto? Fisto's, he's dead. He's not here. Anyways, Fisto had some work stuff to do, so he wasn't going to be able to be here. I
Also,
decided.
the mute button. It's a real bitch.
I
It's a
know,
real
yeah.
bitch, the mute button.
Well, it's funny because the reason we
Professional
didn't have an
podcast.
yeah, the reason we didn't have an episode last week is because you were gone, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a solo
Yeah.
episode. So I recorded like a 45-minute solo episode, and I was doing some experimenting with the audio, and I was experimenting with the software, and I listened to it, and it was complete and absolute garbage. I was like, oh my God, this audio quality is so bad. I tried to fix it in like post-production with some like amplifying volume, and it just came out so distorted and sounded so weird. I was like, no, this is trash. So I just scrapped it. I re-recorded it.
Smoke it.
Yeah, I re-recorded it like right then and there, and then that sounded like ass too. And I'm like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And I didn't get back in time. And then it was just like, you know what, this is too much effort. Like I'm good. We can skip a week. All right, but
Yeah.
tonight we do have a guest. All right, tonight we have William Hunter Duncan. He
Woo!
is from the Born on 4th of July Substack, so he's a fellow Substacker. You probably know him. He's a builder, a remodeler, gardener, brewer, fermenter, bookbinder, chief guardian of the Octagon Society, uh, Order of Spiritual Alchemy. That's what he sent me, anyways. So what's up, William or Hunter? I think you like to be called. What's going on, Hunter?
I typically go by Hunter with my friends. Very good to meet both you guys officially.
Yes,
We've
sir.
been acquaintances on Substack for quite some time, so it's good to be here.
All right, man. All right, so tell us a bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, and then we'll start just chatting like we usually do.
Well, I grew up here in central Minnesota. I wandered around for a while, lived in Minneapolis for 20 years or so. Minneapolis went sour, and moved back here to the house that I grew up in to take care of my elderly folks. General contractor by trade, so I build stuff, remodel houses, and do a lot of Gardening. I probably grow 50% of the food by volume that my parents and I eat.
That's
And we hunt
awesome.
fish for a lot of the rest. And so, yeah, it's been nice coming back, actually. Uh, Central Minnesota doesn't get a lot of press, but it's very peaceful here and very quiet in a world that's gone more or less mad.
Right. So Minnesota, that's the Midwest, right? I would say that's Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, it's practically Canada here. Some Minnesotans sound like Canadians. Um, and
It's
yeah,
like
we
it's like polite, slightly less bitter Midwest. That's always the vibe I got being from Ohio. Minnesota's like Minnesota, eh? They're a little more polite up there, eh?
yeah, I mean, there's a story. They say that there's Minnesota nice, but
Yes.
they'll give you directions to anywhere in the area except their own house. So
Oh, that's great. I
That's
actually hadn't heard
awesome.
that before. Anywhere but my house. That's fantastic.
That's good, man. All right. So you're born and raised Minnesota in however you pronounce that. I'm sorry, guys. Um, and you're back in Minnesota. That's cool. Yeah. Before we start chatting, Fisto, what's been going on with you, man?
Well, like I was trying to say at the beginning of the podcast, but I professionally muted myself because I'm awesome at it. No, school is over. School is done. We ended last week, Wednesday. So our freshmen and sophomores did really great on their end of the year testing. I don't know how it works in other states necessarily, but in Florida, there's a whole battery of EOCs and state tests that you have to take basically through like the end of it kind of starts like super late April and then all the way through May. So it's kind of a clusterfuck. So we had a little party on Wednesday and I was put in charge of the food team. which meant the day of, I was basically running the kitchen staff basically all day out in the South Florida heat, which was tremendous fun. I think I was telling you I was running around basically barking orders at people and jumping in when the day needed to be saved, and I ended up getting a random group of like 5 or 6 guys together to just get it fucking done.
Nice.
And then one of my other colleagues assisted as well. She's fantastic, so she jumped right in and helped out. But yeah, it was just like running around barking orders all day, and then by the end of the day, I mean, by like 2 o'clock, I'm sitting in my room with, we're waiting for the day to end, and I'm just like dying. A lot of fun, but yeah, it just kicked my ass. So school's over. I don't have summer school this year, which is kind of wild. I've got 2 months of just yeah, I don't even know
That's
what I'm gonna do.
awesome.
Yeah, so far it's hanging out with the life. I've been playing a lot of Civilization 5, which has been fun, and then reading. Like I mentioned before we got started, I started Lord of the Rings, reading it from the beginning, and I've also picked up some other smaller books like The Quiet American, and my copy of Journey to Reality. That's it, right? That's
Hmm.
that's Dr. Zach's book. Yeah, that just arrived today, so I'm gonna crank that one out too. So that's probably gonna be my summer. I thought I was gonna have like a project, but I think I'm just gonna I think I'm just gonna make like a hobbit and kind of just wander the Shire and see what I see. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. I do want
man.
to talk about that book, though. I think once you read it, we should talk about it on the podcast, especially because we're going to have, hopefully, if everything works out timing wise, we're going to have him as guest. So for listeners, Journey to Reality, it's called Journey to Reality: A Sacramental Life in the Secular Age. It's a book that blew my mind. It's a very short book, um, and it was so my wife is joining the Orthodox Church. She's becoming a catechumen in on Sunday actually with my daughter, which is freaking cool, you know. And there's these like kind of weekly classes that they do, and our priest is using that book as kind of the introduction to the Orthodox Church. Even though the book itself is not like 100% like all about orthodoxy, it has tons of value for everybody because it does a really good job of explaining the idea of the sacred and sacramental life, and talks about kind of a disenchanted world that we live in. So for the philosophical reasons alone, I think it's a very good book. So I read the whole thing, and then I kind of like take part in the classes as an add-on. I'm just there because I like to hang out with people.
Yeah.
And the book blew my mind. I mean, I shared it with friend of the podcast and guest Isaiah, and he read it and he really liked it a lot. And Dr. Zach Porco also has a series of videos of like a podcast. Well, it's a YouTube, but I'll call it a podcast, and it's really good. And he talks about political movements in the contemporary world. And I was actually listening to one on fascism today, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, I really recommend the book, and I think that once you finish it, we really should talk about it because there's a lot of interesting stuff in it, and
Yeah.
my copy's just covered in like notes and stuff.
Cool. Yeah, no,
So
I think that would be fun. Maybe we do like a two-parter. I was thinking about picking up some C.S. Lewis this summer also and making that part of my reading. I listened to his Journey to Reality 1, the catechism lecture,
mhm,
and he takes his clarity of communication is artistic.
right,
It was just like, yeah, cool. Like it was a pleasurable listen, but he explained the basics of the faith, the basics of the Trinity, and it was just like, yeah, I'm tracking with all that. That was
right.
really great. Yeah, it's
Well,
solid.
you know
It's
what's
good stuff.
interesting? It's interesting that you mentioned C.S. Lewis, right? Because I think that the book Journey to Reality is comparable to C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
In its clarity, of course, it's a lot more contemporary, which is interesting because C.S. Lewis was kind of an Anglican, and that book is focused on his Anglican faith. But
Right.
this is a book more focused on Orthodoxy, which is a lot older than Anglicanism. And it's interesting because this book feels a lot more contemporary and modern. Like he actually, uh, speaks to a 21st century person as opposed to somebody living around the time of World War II, which is when C.S. Lewis presented Mere Christianity as a radio podcast. I guess it podcast, a radio broadcast, right? Um, which I'll give you two things. You know what I did? I've been having a lot of days off from work. I've taken a lot of days off for different reasons. I took 2 days off so I could go up to Charleston for the Feast of Ascension, and we did that, and it was really great. Got to meet Isaiah in person. That was freaking awesome, you know. And we on a 4 day weekend, kind of one of the things we did was we watched the entirety of the Lord of the Rings movies. You know, we watched the extended cuts. We watched one a day, so like 4 hours a day. And my daughter, my 6-year-old, she sat through every single second of those movies. I mean,
Nice.
like
Good kid.
legitimate. You know, I was like, yes, yes, watch
Yes.
him, do not talk. No, but she was all about it.
Do not talk or you don't eat
Yeah.
for a week.
And like, how dare you blaspheme, Erica? No, but and you know, she has her favorite
Oh,
characters
God.
and stuff. You know, can you guess her favorite character?
Man, see, because I'm thinking about going for the obvious one, but I don't want to go for the obvious one because I
All right,
think because it's your daughter. I'm gonna say Samwise.
No, no, no.
Damn it.
She's a Legolas girl.
See, I should have gone with the obvious. I immediately thought, well, Orlando Bloom was a pretty boy back then. He's got the blonde hair and the arrows and the surfing on surf, surfing
Yeah,
on
she's a
shields and shit.
Legolas girl.
Damn
all
it,
around. She's
you know what? Tell her Fisto's disappointed. All right,
Yeah.
just let her know that.
she's an elf fan. But yeah, and you know, we read to her every night, and she reads. She's capable. She knows she's almost 7, and she can read basically full novels, like, you know, age appropriate novels and stuff. But we read her a little bit older, like level novels every night, and she helps me read while I read. And we started reading Chronicles of Narnia, which, interestingly enough, I've only read the first one. I've never read the
Really?
series. Yeah, so
Really?
I'm
Oh,
kind of
dude, you're
excited.
in for a trip, man. You're in for a trip, dude.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
and you know, there's always the debate that like nobody likes Turkish delights. Yes, I love Turkish delights, guys. Okay, Turkish
Really?
delight is awesome. I don't know who doesn't like it, you freaking American heathens, man. You know, Turkish delight.
Whatever, man.
Do you like Turkish delight, William? I mean, Hunter.
I don't even know if I do or not, honestly.
Turkish delight's pretty awesome. But I did want to talk about something that's been so anyways, there's been a lot of stuff cropping up on the internet. I don't know if you followed this Substack, but and I'm not even talking about the whole, you know,
Trying to avoid it more these days.
Ukrainians bombing Russian strategic bombers, which is, can you please not usher in the apocalypse, guys?
Hey, I heard some good news. I heard some good news today. Apparently, Trump and Putin had a phone call regarding that issue, along with some other things. So whatever was discussed was obviously not revealed. But the fact that they are speaking to each other, I think, is an excellent sign. It's when they stop speaking to each other that it's like, fuck, oh no, here we go. You know, so
you
but who knows?
I don't want to get in. I don't want to even get into that. You know.
Yeah,
But here's
yeah.
here's the thing, right? We cannot break norms, right? Because breaking norms allows other people to break norms. You know.
Right.
And the reason their strategic bombers are just out in the open is because our strategic bombers are out in the open. If you drive by any of the big bases in the Midwest that have strategic bombers, they're exactly in the same position as ours. If you go by Norfolk, Virginia, or, you know, Hawaii or San Diego, all our aircraft carriers and ships, they're all lined up just like that, next to each other.
It's the nation state equivalent of open carry, right?
Right, right.
That's what you're doing. Like I got it right here.
Right.
Got that thing on me.
Speaking of norms, I've been assuming since this happened that this has something to do with some sort of rogue elements in the deep state. I'm not assuming that Trump or Hegseth has control over our military and intelligence at this point. Because I've been hearing for a long time that Ukrainians can't even, you know, manage their weapons without our GPS, without our guidance.
Right.
And so I'm not assuming this is just NATO. And speaking of that, I mean, Germany and France and the UK are essentially on the verge of civil war. And what are their leaders trying to do? They're trying to start a nuclear exchange with Russia.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking Trump and his people got caught a little flat-footed on this one. And so I'm glad to hear that he and Putin are talking.
Yeah, I would agree with the flat-footed part. in so much as people are claiming that, hey, the ball got rolling on this a year and a half ago. Okay, well, I mean, that kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, I know we want to get into
Yeah,
other topics
speaking of
here,
like
but
Yeah.
a
yeah, go ahead, go
less
ahead.
enchanted way of looking at the world imaginable, that's basically where these people are at. So you mentioned that earlier when you're talking about that book, Alexandru, in the in creating a sense of enchantment of the
Yeah.
world. And I think that's really important for a lot of people on the right, especially young men these days, trying to get a sense of what really matters, what's really true
Mm.
in this world. And so that's a good place to be thinking about while these so-called rulers of the West are leading us in a direction of some sort of total war.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's kind of the terrifying part is, the truth is like all war is is evil, by its nature, right? Like you can have just defensive wars and you can have that kind of stuff, but the act itself is evil, in my opinion. And doesn't mean you shouldn't defend yourself, doesn't mean you shouldn't defeat enemies, but it just is. It's evil, uh, and cheering for it and pushing enemies, or ultimately we're talking about people getting killed and suffering and people's lives getting destroyed, and just it's not good. And evil like permeates, like stuff that happens somewhere, it ripples, it has negative effects for humanity as a whole, and sucks, right? And like to have to watch people cheer this stuff on the internet, and over the way these people are larping and stuff just really makes me sick to my stomach, and I'm not just talking about the Ukraine war, I'm talking about all of it. It's like we've become such depraved savages. We're no different than like the Romans who used to watch people getting, I'm sorry about that, guys. The Romans watching people get murdered in the Colosseum, like, or torn by animals. Like what a level of depravity, we are as a society when we watch that stuff on YouTube videos. It makes me sick. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good. Your dog's always got to show up,
Uh,
so it's all fine. But yeah, Hunter, what did you want to say?
it's astoundingly depraved. It's profound psychopathy to be like enjoying this. MSNBC, the usual, have been almost giddy about it. And that's just madness. That's insane. These people wouldn't survive this kind of wars that they're trying to provoke. Here in America, they've been talking about civil war for so long, but most of the people who think about that or talk about it like it's a good thing wouldn't survive it.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
commented about that earlier these past couple of days, and I want to parlay that into two of the topics I know we wanted to discuss today. Um, these folks cheering for stand up to Russia, don't be a pussy, don't be a it's like this thing pops off, you're cannibal food, man. Come on. Like, what's
Hmm.
what's what's the joke when you see a bunch of diabetic preppers like loaded up on all kinds of stuff? Like, yeah, that's an ammo dump. That's what you are. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to be able to get anything done. So it's this, like you said, utter and complete and total depravity. And that is, I think, actually, before we get into solutions, because I know we want to talk about, reenchantment of the world. Alexander and I come from a Christian background. I understand you come from a pagan background. And then I also know that you and I, at some stage, are going to, discuss, have a dialogue, perhaps, about what is to be said to young men. So, how about what's the problem? Like, where did it all go wrong? What do you think, Hunter?
Uh,
Big question, I know, but like I
it
feel
is a
like I
big
feel like maybe we
question.
start there, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know if it just went wrong or it's just that the West is tired. Uh,
Yeah,
Western civilization is old and it's derelict. It's become depraved. Uh, and so the challenge, I think, for the right in America is like, how do we we restore a sense of what America is or what it was meant to be, maintain the best of what the West is about, and look to effectively starting a new civilization here in America.
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know that it. I don't know that it was something like a trigger. Alexandru, you might say that it was liberalism. I, but part of me says liberalism is just sort of the course of Western civilization and the process of like coming to understand ourselves. But it's absolutely gone bat shit crazy. It's gone mad. It's begun to devour itself, and it's become liberalism has essentially become all devouring. It's become a purely destructive force in the world, and if it continues, that it will utterly destroy America and the West.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. I wouldn't say it was liberalism because I feel like liberalism in a way is a symptom. I think the beginning of our issues is, happened in the Garden of Eden, right? And you here you look at it this way, right? We're talking about myth, right? And the question is, it's like, oh my God, did it really happen, right? Well, there's truth and there's truth, right? There's fact and there's truth. You know what I mean? Right? Fact
Yeah.
is something that you can prove empirically or with fact, that you can fully verify, right? And then truth is, well, truth. It's something that is true, and we can't factually say that it started in the Garden of Eden, but we can truthfully say that what was the story about? It was about people becoming. The snake tells her you shall be like gods, right? So what are we talking about there? We're talking about radical, right, individualism. You will be like gods, right? And that's liberalism, guys. All right. Everything since then is doing your own thing against the community, against the personhood of the greater whole. And what is liberalism? The entire liberal, like progressive project is radical individualism with no care about anybody else but your own material self. Right. So
And not
yeah,
even then, like your material self can be whatever it is you imagine it needs to be. And we dare believe that, you know, you can become something you're not.
right.
Like to an absurd degree. Like, yeah, there's hey, little Jimmy's gonna grow up to be president someday. Okay, fine, sure, whatever. And then there's little Jimmy's gonna grow up to be a beauty queen. Wait,
Right.
hold on. What?
Right. And
Which
I
if
agree.
that liberalism,
What's that?
which if that liberalism is foundational to the West, I mean, if you're talking about it literally starting in the Garden of Eden, then uh, the goal I would think would not be to like throw out individualism or liberalism, generally speaking. I would think that it would be more about maintaining some of that individuality while also restoring a deep connection to family, community, and society.
I
Right.
think
Uh,
sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead, Fisto.
a great, we all have a great responsibility to taking care of each other.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And I think what you're describing is the ultimate problem. Recently, I read that Alexander Solzhenitsyn speech where he was talking to Harvard at commencement, and he talked about since the Enlightenment and since the birth of the modern world, I mean, let's be honest, guys, we've taken incredible strides when it comes to our physical and material needs and our physical and material understanding of the real world. I mean, look at us. We're having a conversation over magical electrical waves that shoot into the wall. You know what I mean? Like, holy smokes, this is incredible. But like you just said, Hunter, we've essentially lost or have gained all of this in spite of, or not in spite of, we've gained all this at the cost of our spiritual maturity. And I think I like what Solzhenitsyn has to say. I don't think the answer is going back. The answer is going through. And it's going to be figuring out, okay, how do we keep the best of the material advancements, but realize what's most important, what's higher, what is that common bond we all have, not just with each other, but, you know, not just with each other, but reality itself. Like the arche, like Dr. Zach was talking about in that podcast we were discussing. The what is true, and how do we orientate ourselves towards that, while at the same time honoring the best of what's developed, over the course of human history.
Right.
I think
No,
that's a good lesson
you're
for
absolutely right.
young men, generally speaking, is like of service. What do you live in service in any way to anything other than yourself?
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a
So,
huge test.
you know,
Yeah, go ahead,
talking
Alex.
about individuality, right? And build on what you said, um, there, what we need to focus on is not to be individuals, but to be persons, right? And in this case, I'm using it in a very Christian sense, right? A person is different than an individual. In an individual, the locus of focus is internal, right? It's on you, the I, right? A person, it can be one of many. And what I mean by that is you often, in theological literature, you'll see like the Trinity referred to as the persons of the Trinity, where they're one, but they're also three, right? So when you apply that concept of the person to you, you're not just you, but you are your family, your community, your individuality is not separate from the people next to you, from your daughter, your son, your mother, your father, your ancestors. You're not separate from that, right? You are who you are is like what everybody is, right? And it's more of a connected kind of state of mind. And it it's subtle, but there's a lot of meaning in those two words, right? And I think that's where the mistake has gone, to where we have become the I, and then instead of the I being a part of something, the I tries to force everybody to adapt and accept their own personalities. And that's where we see a lot of the nonsense going on, where I'm this, you should accept me. I believe this, I am this, and you are you, and it's separate. They might be nice to each other, but there's this just critical force wall in between all these individual I's, when really we should be persons together. And that's I think an interesting point to think about.
And I think too, then if you're going to rephrase it as person, then we still have an immense responsibility to become the best person that we can possibly be, to like exemplify all our greatest gifts and abilities, but as an act in a sense of service to those others, to family, community, and society.
Right, absolutely right. And I took some heat today, or maybe that was yesterday, on Substack, right, where I posted,
Who
and
even remembers? Who even knows?
oh, I know. Was it from that one? The one I told you, I was like, I have a feeling I'm gonna take some heat on this quick thought I just spit out real fast, right? And I said, people on the right, right, people on the right, and I'm talking about our sphere, right? Our sphere here, need to take a deep breath, step back, and realize the obvious truth that you will never fix the liberal progressive problems in America, because I know you guys don't want to admit this, but they are built into the core of this country. Okay. The thing is, the founding fathers and the guys that wrote the Constitution and all those, they were liberal progressives of their day. They're individualist, and they believed in the I. I mean, look, you can deny it all you want, but Thomas Jefferson was a deist who literally rewrote the New Testament, and he took out all the miracles that Jesus performed. Okay? So if you take away all the miracles that Jesus performed, you are not a Christian and you do not believe in the divinity of Christ, right? So we're talking about, he wasn't a traditionalist, guys, all right? If you read the Declaration of Independence, right? If you read the Constitution, those are not traditional freaking documents. Nobody in the history of mankind, a day before those were written, would consider those traditional freaking documents. Okay. And I don't care what anybody says. You have to be historically illiterate to believe that. Those are radical liberal documents. So fundamentally,
You
hmm? Go ahead.
sorry, you're reminding me of that joke. We're falling for the classic American blunder of 50 years ago, nothing existed 50 years ago.
Right.
Just that the historical literacy, like you said, is
Right.
just not
And
there.
you get these guys, man, on the regular, we need to return back to American traditional values because we are a country built on tradition. Oh, you mean the country?
250 years, that's
Yeah,
cute.
you mean
Okay,
the
sure, yeah,
country
all right.
whose middle class revolted against their God-given king and rewrote the way governments were done for the last 2,000 years before it happened? Oh, yeah, that tradition, right? Okay, yeah, sure, guy. Okay, you know? Those traditional Puritans on the Mayflower that were kicked out of Europe because they were trying to destroy, all churches except for their own radical church. Yeah,
Hey, that's my family you're talking about, bro.
yeah, a bunch of radical heretics.
Let's go.
Right. But
No,
you know what I mean, right?
yeah,
Like
absolutely. Well,
we need to
it's
wrestle with that reality, right? How can you build a traditional society, harkening back to one of the most radical documents in the history of politics?
yeah, we got to pause for a moment. We've got to pause for a moment and realize we are currently making the traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Like this North American experiment, this American experiment is too goddamn young to be like, oh yeah, back to traditional American values.
Right.
Bro, go talk to the Roman Empire and then get back to me. Like how 250 years, you're not even out of the mythic time yet. You know what I mean? Like it's like we don't even have I think at that part they didn't have like an accurate accounting of the kings yet. Like
Right.
it's like
And
no.
yeah,
This is the time that'll be lost to myth and legend
right.
thousands of years from now.
I would totally agree with you, Alexander, that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are all very liberal documents. The founding of this country was a part of the liberal progress of Europe from the Enlightenment on. But that's also, in a sense, the sort of genius of America, and what makes America so very different than any other country in the world, and that our founders essentially gave us an opportunity to create our own country. Now, you can make plenty of arguments about how sour that has become and how off the
Yeah.
rails that has become, but that still is part of our genius. I think that's part of the genius of being an American and an individual, in the sense that we have an opportunity. America is like the one place in the history of the world where any man can make his own life. He can fulfill his dreams in the path that he chooses, and no one has ever really been able to do that anywhere to the degree
Right.
that Americans have been able to. So I think that
Yeah.
is a part
Yeah.
of our genius, but at the same time, we got to recover some kind of like traditional foundational basis in order to like restructure society so that we even have anything like a society going forward.
Right.
Because it's all
Yeah, it's I mean that bell's not getting unrung. Like you're not going back to we're not going back to the British Empire. You know what I mean? Heck,
Right.
British may not even be a thing in 100 years.
Right. You know what I mean?
it might not be
Something
Right,
I want to
right, so-
mention. Yeah. So something I want to mention real quick, Hunter, what you were saying about like the genius. Have you guys seen Miss Saigon? This is
Nope.
going to seem a little random. The musical Miss Saigon. So because of
No, I'm not now.
Yeah, well, my wife and I, we just watched The Quiet American, and I'm reading the book, and it's about Vietnam. It's about the American involvement in Vietnam, and that's what Miss Saigon is about. Guys, I would strongly recommend watching the musical, if only for the character of the engineer. He is a Vietnamese pimp who is dreaming of getting to the United States, and his last number in the show is this vaudevillian Broadway, just Las Vegas over the goddamn top. And I'm laughing my ass off at it because it's not just like kind of poking fun at Americans, but it's also going, he like you guys are kind of awesome. You guys are kind of insane with just how over the bloody top. Like, America is the kind of place that only certain people can really thrive and survive in. And the kinds of people that see it, they go, "Oh my God, that's the promised land. That's where I got it. That's where I got to be."
Right.
He's the best character in the musical. He's worth the price of admission because he's just so hilarious. He's like, I speak Ho Chi Minh, but I think Uncle Sam. Like, it's hilarious. And the point in that is it goes back to, I think if we tried to fix things and we lost the essence of what's being American, I think that would be a regression. And when I say what it means to be an American, I mean an American is whatever you want it to be as long as you can convince everyone else that's what you are. And that's just, there's something in there that I don't know. I think we have to be careful with overcorrecting. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Right. No, so
I don't know.
I want to make it clear, to everybody, and I'm sure, I mean, you know this, Fisto, of course,
Yeah,
right? But
man.
just to make it clear for everybody is I am not criticizing, any of that stuff, right?
No.
What I'm criticizing is what I think is that we have to be honest with ourselves, right?
Yes,
Because
exactly.
we cannot, address issues and come up with solutions and implement plans and move forward until we dispel mythology. We dispel no longer useful myths of nationhood and that kind of stuff, or what's going on, or that type of thing, right? Because we cannot revert back to forever Reaganism and that type of thing. You know what I mean? We have to be honest and say, this is why this has happened. All right. Maybe it's not the fault of this evil progressives that creeped out of the ocean or something like that, like some kind of a monster from the Blue Lagoon,
Release
Maybe
the Kraken.
maybe they're us. Maybe
Yeah.
we are equal in a lot of ways because we do not realize that the seed was there from the very beginning. Doesn't mean we
Yeah.
cut down the tree, but we have to realize that, because, you look at a lot of the things that we don't like about like progressive ideology, right? But the Constitution is not against any of the stuff that the progressives like, from trans stuff to all the other stuff, right? It's all very much justifiable using the Constitution, all right?
Yeah, it's the Constitution is not really interested in these questions. It provides a framework, or attempted to provide a framework to settle these questions. And however they get settled, well, good luck.
Right, right,
And that's the truth, in the sense that anybody can become what they want to become in America,
Yeah.
as long as they're doing great harm to somebody else.
Yeah.
Although in some cases you can do great harm to somebody else and still be a star in America. But
yeah,
we that's part of our genius. And also at the same time, you go to war with the pagans online, Alexandru, and the part of that idea of going back to Reaganism or the 50s or the traditional origins of the country, Dion Fortune would have called that the left-hand path. You can't go back to the past. You can't live. You can't recreate the society of the past. You have to evolve. You have to continue, be creative, create something new. That is a path towards enlightenment or building anything worth building. If you try to go back into the past and recreate the past, that's just a path of destruction and collapse and failure.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. We're moving forward. All right. We are moving forward.
It's harder to build things than to break things down. And
Right.
there are not a lot of great ideas in America at this point about like, what would we build? If we're going to build a civilization, a new civilization here, what would that even look like? Who has any idea what that would look like?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you are, you're a self-proclaimed pagan, right? And I have been getting into it with pagans online on Substack, right? And there's a reason I've been getting into it with pagans, right? Even though I'm not 100% predisposed against you guys by any means, right? It's that so many of you guys, and I say you guys just because, are fucking assholes,
Sure.
And a good example is that dude, the noble trader. But not only are you
Oh God.
assholes, listen, not only are you assholes, right? Or he is an asshole. I will use individual, like, is that you're doomers in a way. You'll have somebody post something and boom, you come, not you, but he comes on there and what is that idiot that I blocked a while ago? The one that we had for a while, that dwarf rapist guy or whatever,
Dwarven Allfather?
Yeah,
guy?
that jerk, right? And
Oh my God, that guy was a hoot.
it is a schizo, right? And they have
Yeah.
nothing interesting to say. It's always like, oh, you just love the blacks and the Jews. I'm like, okay, dude, all right, cool. Thank you for contributing to the conversation, right? And some of it is like, okay, like today, I think this dude commented on yours, and I jumped in, because I was kind of irritated at work in between patients, right? I was like, my nurse is like, dude, are you mad or something? I'm like, no, I'm just telling this dude off on the internet. She's like, oh yeah, okay, fine. No, I'm like, anyways, so this guy goes, oh, of course it's an Orthodox dude with this take, and that take was like a pretty mellow, like universalist kind of thing, right? And he goes like, blah 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 blah. You're gonna have a country full of gamer word. I'm not gonna say it because we do post on YouTube, right? And you know what? I'm like, this was my reply to him, right? I go, you're tiresome because you come on every thread with nothing but nonsense. Just LARP, 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 LARP. Never any solutions, never anything. So let's be honest here, right? This guy is a white supremacist. He's a white nationalist. He wants a white country. He wants a white America, right? Whatever white means, okay? We have to define that to begin with, but whatever, right? But let's assume that is the right idea and that's the right choice, right? So now in the United States, as of the last census, there are 40 million black people, right? 40 million, right? There are approximately 60 million Hispanics, right? That is the ones that are documented and we know about and answered the census. So we could probably say there's 100,000 million Hispanics, right? But let's just stick to those basic numbers you can find on Wikipedia, right? Not counting Asians, not counting mixed race people, because half of Texas is mixed race, right? Because every other white dude I know in Texas is married to a Hispanic woman and vice versa, right? And in California. We are talking about 100 million, right? 100 million blacks and Hispanics in the United States today, according to the US Census, right? So what are you going to do, Mr. like white nationalist pagan? Are you going to murder 100 million people, right? Are you going to deport 100 million people by force? Some of them, well, you can't deport African Americans because they've been here longer than a lot of white people have, genetically speaking, right? Like, you know what I mean? They have more right to this land than I do as a European-born person. But are you going to deport 100 or murder 100 million people? Right? Like the entirety of World War II killed 20 million Europeans in almost 10 years. Right? And you're telling me you're going to use the force of the U.S. military, like all 45,000 people in the U.S. military or whatever, to murder 100 million people in the U.S.? Like, first of all, who the fuck is going to do that? Right?
Yeah, never mind. The United States is the most heavily armed country on the planet.
Right?
So I mean, good luck. Like,
so yeah,
the enemy gets a vote,
why,
right?
like, why even talk? Why even talk about shit like that?
Yeah.
Okay, like it's fucking absurd. It's freaking. It pisses me off. Not even on on the moral level. Which, by the way, the idea of murdering 100 million people, the idea of murdering one person upsets me. But 100 million people, right, is so fucking evil and so depraved and disgusting that this guy can sit here and go, oh, you stupid Christ cucks. We were gonna build a white. You're not gonna do shit, motherfucker. That's exactly it. You don't even have a plan. So I asked him, so tell me, how are you going to do it, intelligent, enlightened pagan, compared to us stupid-ass Christians that love people? How are you going to murder 100 million people? Are you going to round them up and machine gun them and fill graves, right? The Nazis, at best, supposedly, got 6 million. And it took them how long? And the entirety of their nation behind it. Not only their nation, but all their other allied nations. And they still couldn't eliminate 6 million people. So how the fuck are you going to get rid of 100 million people, right? And that's not counting Asians, mixed race, and all this stuff. You gonna do it, bro? It's just a masturbatory, sick fucking fantasy. And the fact that we even engage with these fucking lunatics is disgusting and stupid. So I asked him, how are you gonna do it, bro? And he's like, oh, whoa, faggot. You know? I'm like, okay, nothing. Right? Because you have nothing, right? You're just a deranged, fat fucking retard. That's it. He's probably not even white. He's probably some fucking Pajit from fucking Pajitistan, jerking off on this computer. You know what I mean?
Pajitistan. Oh, God. Tell us how you really feel, brother.
No, because it's disgusting, really, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it is.
Like, you're going to sit here and say Americans are going to murder 100 million of their fellow countrymen? Like,
never.
No.
Get out of here, dude. Get the fuck out of here.
Paganism.
What's that?
That is not paganism.
No, I know.
That is not paganism. That is psychopathology. Is
right.
What that is.
Well, that's what
that
I
is
said.
Somebody who has that is somebody who hates Christianity for whatever reason, who embraces the name pagan, not having any sense of what that is or what that means. Paganism doesn't even mean anything, really. It's not even a word that most so-called pagans even use.
Right.
For something like some people, guys like that, I'm just like, what is your practice? You want to call yourself a pagan? Then what is your practice? Who are you praying to? What are you doing? What are you doing to call yourself a pagan other than calling yourself a pagan? Other than presenting yourself as a pagan? Do you believe in any God? Do you believe in anything at all? Do you have a system of ritual that you follow? My guess is these guys don't. Most people who call themselves pagan rage about Christianity aren't pagan, they're just anti-Christian.
Right. They're basically like the new atheists that like didn't get the hint, and went in the wrong direction in a way. You know what I mean? Like they're still like, no, I met those guys, man. Like, I spent all my life and my blood pressure just rose, gotta pop a Zin real fast, No, because it's absurd, right? I'm sitting here and I'm sitting here, I was looking at this post and I posted that. Like I said, I was sitting, my freaking coworker who's black was sitting next to me and I was laughing at this, I was like, look at this fucking retard, and it's like, like, oh, come on, man, and I, like I said, I don't even want to paint like the idea of paganism is kind of a non sequitur kind of conversation, because you're right. Like, what is when you say pagan, right? So, what does pagan mean, right? I mean, let's review that for a second. A pagan is a non-Christian, non-Abrahamic religion person, right? Right.
What's that? One more time. Sorry, Hunter. I didn't quite catch you. What'd you say?
Non-monotheist, somebody who's essentially a polytheist, or But like I've heard you say, Alexandru, you can call pretty much anything from an Eastern religion to Druids to spiritualist pagan. There's no fundamental definition of paganism except that it's just not monotheist. It's not
right.
Yeah, I liked what you had to say about what is your religious practice,
right?
Because religion is how we express our worldview. What do we think about the world, and then how should we then live? Isn't that kind of what religion is?
Well, right. Religion is ultimately what religion does, right? Is it's an answer to the question, which is what is truth, right? And I'm not talking about like what is like a fact, but what is truth. It answers what
is the nature of reality?
What is why? Exactly. What is the nature of reality? Right?
Yeah.
That's what religion does. It asks, what is the nature of reality? And is there good? Is there evil? Is there, it's the north on a compass is what religion basically is, right? Which fundamentally is why the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence cannot ever be it can never lead to anything great besides political, like, political economic like stuff, because it doesn't answer that question, right? It leaves it open-ended, and because it leaves it open-ended, you can interpret it however way you want it, right?
So here's a question for both of you guys. I actually have an answer. This isn't rhetorical, but if the Constitution and the Republic does not create the kind of country or create the kind of nation that the three of us think is best. I think all three of us would definitely agree that there's deep sickness and deep dysfunction in the American constitutional republic, right? I can presume that safely.
Right.
Okay. So then I have an answer for this, but I'd like to hear what you guys have to say first. What form does our nation need to take? What form will it take going forward? What do you guys think? What should it do, or maybe what will it do? Because should may be a pointless thought.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take this, Hunter, and I'll answer next, or I'll go first if you want to.
I can go first too. This is I'm kind of hitting a pet project of mine here, but
Go right ahead.
All right, Alex, do you want to answer first, and then I'll
Yeah,
go?
I'll answer first, and because
Right.
you posed a question.
Yeah.
So I think, you have to look, I'll look at the pagans. Let's look at the pagans, right? Let's look at the pagan empires. Like everybody's favorite pagan empire, the Roman Empire before it became.
Yeah, brother.
Right. Let's look at the pagan, right? The most absurd thing about, a secular government or a secular document like that is this idea of separation in church and state, right? The Romans, or let's say the Greeks who had democracy, the Athenians, right? They did not believe, like if you told them about separation of church and state, they would find it absurd, right? They're polytheists, right? So they believed in more than one God. And they respected a lot of gods in Rome and in Athens and, in the ancient world, the ancient pagan world. But, and here's the key, their church and state was not separate, all right? The emperor was almost, once he passed away, he was a god and he was venerated like a god. Everything they did was, in a way sacramental, right? To use a word, right? Everything they did was spiritual in their actions. We look back at the Olympics in Greece. Those were religious rituals, right? Dedicated to Athena, and they come from Athens, right? They did those rituals and their incense burning and their sacrifices of animals and all that kind of stuff in the state, right? They did it as citizens of the state, right? So what that means is that they had a higher moral hook to pin their behavior, right? And when they talked about glory and honor and that kind of stuff, they had that north on the compass that was metaphysically and spiritually there. It wasn't this materialistic worship of, identity that a secular document gives you, right? So that's what we're missing. So the actual form of government doesn't really matter. It can be a monarchy, it can be a dictatorship, it can be all that stuff, right? What's missing is the checks and balances between the two, right? So you have the church or the temple or, whatever, the clergy, whether it's Christian or pagan, right? That kind of sets this moral compass, that goes above mankind. There's something there more than man, a truth, an undeniable divine truth. And then you have your secular government, your kings, your dictators, your senators, or whatever the hell you want, right? And the idea is those two are not separate, okay? They are checks and balances on each other, right? Because in medieval times, which is probably the height of good Christian, society, a king was balanced by the church, right? Morally. Did it always work out? Of course not, because, we're, fallible, pathetic pieces of shit as humans, right? But the idea is that a king did not murder you indiscriminately because the church would slap him down, and vice versa, right? Like I was a Gaul or a Frenchman or whatever, a part of this kingdom, something, but I was also a citizen of Christ, right? So this balance worked. When you separate the two, when you banish one of these, the moral element to it, right? Well, who gets to judiciate morality, right? The state does, right? The secular state. And the secular state can do whatever the fuck it wants then without a moral compass, right? So then you can say, well, you know what? Turning your kid into a woman, Oh, that's moral. That's moral, right? Doing whatever you want. That's moral, right?
Yeah.
So without a
I
higher,
want to interject for a second.
go ahead.
Sorry. It makes me think of something. I think the highest morality in a secular society is what's legal. And if it's not legal, well, if you make it legal, now it's okay,
Right, exactly.
which is ridiculous from anybody that believes that there's any kind of actual truth or any kind of actual north. So that's how we get into the situation. Oh, well, it's legal.
Right.
Okay.
Because remember,
Listen, to,
because gang
to
rape is a
follow your
democracy.
logic, to follow your logic, then, Alexandru, either we go back to being a Christian nation, or which then, in a sense, we'd still be derivative of the West. But if we want to create our own civilization in America here, then we need to create our own gods. And that is not a process of that just happens. That's a process that takes centuries, basically.
Right.
And so, and I don't see anything currently that suggests to me that Americans are in any way or position to like creating our own gods in any way,
Right. So,
basically,
so,
except for like consumerism.
right. So
I would
that was my
I would
philosophical
argue I would
answer. Right. Let me give you my
yeah,
practical
I would
answer real
suggest
fast.
okay, yeah.
And then I'll give it to you guys. I want because I gave you like that's half the answer, right? That's the explanation on why.
Yeah, sure.
Because I believe in practical answers, right? In the practical answer, and I'm going to say this as a Christian, right? Um, I have to accept that we're never going to live in my lifetime, or maybe my children's children's children lifetime. We're not going to return. We're not going to put the secular away. It's just not going to happen, right? This is not defeatism. This is just the way of the world, right? We're not going to put it away. Okay, we're not going to return to a medieval system of
No.
the powerful church and kings and that type of thing. That's just not going to happen, right? Definitely not in my lifetime. All right, it's just nonsense, right? Um, so what the real answer is that as a Christian, I think the ideal is remember, as a Christian, we're not going to build the best country ever, right? Building the best country ever is a liberal utopian idea, right? It's an engineering problem, right? It presumes the belief that with the right inputs, with the right actions, you can create something perfect, right? That's utopianism. That's Marxism or, even fascism, right? Because it says that you can, with the right inputs here and there and here and there, you're going to create heaven on earth or something near it. And that's never going to freaking happen because it's not possible, right? So what do I think we could do? Well, the ideal government for me right now is one that is very, 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 very weak and federal. All right. That
Oh,
leaves me the fuck alone so I can build my own local community. That's what I
hmm
want.
yes, that's what I want.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna get.
Right.
I
Um,
hope so. Eventually.
well, yeah, I mean, eventually. I tend to agree with people who point out the problem of the debt bomb, the 37 trillion that the
hmm
federal government owes, and they're simply not doing anything to address. That has been, I don't know how you all, I don't know how old you are, Hunter. Alex is my age, but that's been the story since I was a teenager. What are we going to do about the debt? What are we going to do about the debt? And that was back when it was in single trillions, right? So now it's like, okay, well, apparently we're not going to do anything. That's what we've decided. That bill will eventually come due, and it is going to result in an extremely weak federal system. Because, I mean, think about it. If there's no money, what can Congress do? I don't know what authority they have.
Right.
Then what's the judicial system going to do? I mean, if you don't have any Congress doing their thing, well, then what's the point of the judicial system, right? I think it'll probably devolve into a stronger executive, but it'll probably continue to be a kind of managerial executive trying to hopefully create the softest landing possible. I think in the long term, the wisest course is going to be getting through the debt bomb and trying to have that land as soft as possible which is not to say that it will be soft at all. I simply mean that there's a Soviet style collapse versus a Weimar Germany style collapse. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's going to be bad no matter what. There's no soft, there's no happy ending here.
On the one
And I,
hand, you're going to
and
need a very powerful president or executive to keep this country from breaking up into several different countries.
yeah, I think that's a laudable goal, if only because bigger is better. In the real world, the big countries get to tell the small countries what to do. So unless we want to be divvied up and revert back to the colonial days where everyone is a part of some other empire, we're going to have to stick together whether we like it or not. I don't think as sexy as it is, I don't think succession is the way forward. I don't think that's going to work the way we want it to work, simply because of the realities of the other countries get a vote, and we've already seen how China is voting. This is the big story when it comes to that attack on the Russian bases. How many trailer trucks full of Chinese drones do you think are driving around the United States right fucking now?
Right.
It's a non-zero number. That much is 100% true, and I mean that's just China. Think about all the other actors that are out there, the cartels, the Russians, my God, Ukrainians, they probably have some stuff floating around here just in case they need payback. It's fucking ridiculous.
And it's not even
So
trucks, man. How many Chinese owned
yeah, there's a
super
shed.
tanker container
Yeah,
ships, right?
right, exactly.
Filled with
Yeah.
containers that we think are
Yep.
like cars, but are filled with drones that can just park like a few miles outside of one of our naval bases.
Well, you've got a car shipment, and then there's one in there just in case. There's one
Right.
full of drones just in case they need it. Yeah. So I think you guys, I think we're gonna get what we want. We're gonna get a weak executive. And the smart move is going to be to be in states that are going to be able to weather the storm. And I think you've seen that, like in the 2020 census. Like, look at how many people Texas gained. Look at how many people Florida gained. California is bleeding folks dry. Like, where's everybody going? Probably because those places are more or less relatively well run, and they also have the kinds of things you need when shit hits the fan and the death bomb goes off. Like whoever has the stuff, possession will be 9/10 of the law. You know what I mean? So anyway, I think we are going to get what you guys want, and I think we are in the unenviable position of, I'm going to use Lord of the Rings here because I think it applies to, I think it appeals to people like us, no matter what we actually believe. The best we can hope for is the ride of the Rohirrim. That's our lot. I think Theoden is our lot, guys. 100%. We're gonna have to fucking die, and we're gonna give ourselves. We're gonna lead into the what may be it, and we're gonna have to rely on the kids to figure it out.
Right.
And if we don't, we're fucked. Like if we aren't focused on what we can do to prepare the next generations, we're Denethor. That's all we are. That's all we'll
Right.
be.
And too many of us
So,
are Dana Thor on the internet, man.
oh my God. Denethor's everywhere. Jesus Christ. It's the worst.
It's
That's why I
always
talk so much about local resilience and personal resilience.
Yeah.
Like get your shit together
Yeah.
and take care of your community. Take care of what you can locally.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about what that practically means, Hunter? Because one of the things that attracted me you immediately when we were first getting to know each other on Substack was like, like you said, you grow 50% of your food. That's freaking cool, man. Like
that
that's
is
what I'm talking
amazing.
that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So like
I
share a
tell
little more
people
about that. Yeah, like
at
jump on the
every
soapbox, man.
opportunity I
Yeah.
can, I tell people that the healthiest possible thing you can do, the way to stay healthy is to grow your own food. Because it's not just the eating of healthy food, it's the process of growing it. It also gives you much more of a sense of enchantment of the world. Um,
Mm.
Most peaceful place, if you have a beautiful garden, I guarantee you the most peaceful place in the world for you is probably your garden. And it's the place where you can contemplate the mysteries in solitude. And so it's not just that though. It's also like, what are the trees What are the names of the trees in my region? What are the names of the plants in my region? What edible and medicinal qualities do these plants have? You'd be surprised. Gavin Moonsey who's on Substack, up in Ontario, wrote like a book-length Substack post about all the medicinal qualities of pine trees. Like who
Hmm.
knew? And so what you can't rely on healthcare anymore. Healthcare is essentially a cartel that's predatory. You can't rely on insurance or governments anymore. They're just fundamentally predatory. All they can think of is consuming more of you. And so the only way to really be truly sovereign, the right likes to talk about sovereignty. Well, personal sovereignty is like being able to take care of yourself, being able to take care of your family, being able to take care of your community. Like for a long time, I thought of myself as sort of like a shaman at the edge of the village where like nobody wants much to do with me when everything's fine. But when the shit hits the fan, suddenly I'm the most popular guy around. Uh, because I live an analog life. I live in the actual world. My head isn't in the clouds or in the internet most of the time. It's mostly like out building stuff, out growing stuff, or just taking my dog for a hike in the woods, singing.
Right.
So
It's beautiful,
I
man.
recommend to people like get outside, you
Yeah.
know.
Follow my mother's advice from all those years ago. Go outside.
Well,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I said it in the last post I wrote. Participate.
Mm,
Okay?
Hmm.
yeah.
Participate. All right? Like, you can sit on the internet and we can have conversations and you can type an endless amount of posts about what should be done and what needs to be done. But if all you do is sit online or on a video game, eating hot chip, you're not participating. You need to be out in the sun. You need to be out. Your hands need to be in the soil. You need to be learning, building. Growing. Right. I teach my daughter. My wife and I teach my daughter the names of all the birds. We have a lot of beautiful birds in South Carolina. And my daughter knows the name of every kind of bird. She's like, she sees one, she's like, oh, it's a cardinal. Oh, it's a Carolina wren, or it's so and so. It's a red-breasted woodpecker, right? And I'm amazed when I meet people that have lived here all their lives and can't name one of the birds that they see every day. It's like you're in this beautiful world and you're just ignoring it. You can probably name all the characters in Star Wars, but you can't name the creature of God that like lands on your fence. Pity, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Right.
One
And
thing that I hear most from people when I talk about gardening is, "Oh my gosh, it looks like so much work." I'm like, but what good comes in this life except for hard work?
right.
You know? And if you really want to be like present in the world, then do the work of like learning the names of the birds. You know?
Right.
Learn the names of the trees, learn the names of the plants.
That's ultimate power in a way, that's participation in power by knowing knowledge. And I mean, just knowing everything about you, the universe around you is how you become and how you are part of the universe, and where you fit in. And it humbles you in a way. And it
Hmm.
also gives you the strength to realize that as humans, we are, custodians of this world to a degree, right? Because we do have the power to name them, to catalog them, to understand them, and and to take care of them. And it's like, dude, so many of us live this weird, disconnected jello life. And it's terrifying when you think about it.
And it's a lot by design, I think, like how many times have we heard ourselves called consumers?
Right.
How many times have we heard ourselves called citizens? For every one time that you're called citizen, you're going to be called a consumer 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And that is precisely what anyone who wants to rule the world wants of the populace, just pure consumers. Everything is just a thing to be consumed.
Yeah. It's a nice
And it's
word for
all
slave.
eradication of the self, right?
Right. It's a focus on the material. It's a focus on materials, right? Which this conversation leads me into the other topic I really wanted to talk about, right? Which is, the big conversation right now, and it got fired. I don't know if you follow Twitter or anything, it kind of got reignited, which is the what to tell young men. And this is something we've talked about on this podcast a lot, to the point where I'm actually writing a longer, mini book on it right now, like a treatise or whatever, right? A screed, a manifesto of some sort. It,
Outstanding.
and it's something, yeah, it's something I think a lot about, right? And there's a lot of negativity where if anybody that's a little bit older, like mine and Fisto's age, says anything, we're immediately called boomers, and the doom patrol shoots you down right away, and it's woe is me. And I don't know. I want to hear your take on that topic.
Well, I don't know how Fisto, I don't remember how Fisto and I started talking about this, but I uh, was at a friend's place. He's got a little fire pit, and he was inside, and I was sitting around this fire, and there's like 12 or 13 chairs around this circle, and I just had a vision of like young men sitting in these chairs staring at me, like waiting on me to say something. So I brought it up, I think, on a note or something, and we started talking about it. And it's like, well, in a sense, it's not literally meant like, what will you say to a circle of young men? It's more like a challenge for those of us who are a little older, who are not kids anymore. Like,
Yeah.
what do you have to say to young men? Do you have anything to say to young men? Do you have any guidance for them? Uh, are you capable of mentoring young men? And, I'm not saying I'm some sort of exemplar in this or anything, but it is something I think for a lot of us to consider, a challenge for a lot of us to consider,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of that for me is just like personal responsibility, like take care of yourself in order that you can take care of and be in service to the people that you care about.
Right. Right.
I've thought about that a lot this year. And I think this year in school was a turning point when it comes to this specific question, because I had, I want to say 3 or 4 of my 6 classes had groups of fellas in it that they were clearly groups of friends. One in particular, the lead guy is the son of a man who owns a roofing company, and he's going to inherit the roofing company. So his life is planned out, and he's got his like 4 buddies who are probably going to end up working for him. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be one of those kinds of deals. And we had tons of good discussions. And I think for me, it was, do I have things to share with young men? Well, yeah, absolutely. But I also have to consider the context of where I am, which is a public school. And these
Mm.
guys, part of the trick is that these guys have been told what they should be doing by all kinds of people for literally decades now, you know? So for me, I have a painting hanging above my desk, and it's of Tokugawa Ieyasu. And he's in that famous painting of him where he's sitting, cross-legged, and it's just the shogun abides. You know what I mean? And I have it sit above my desk, and I realize I'm just sitting up here waiting. So when you want to talk, when you want to talk to the shogun, approach. And doing it that way has given me just really cool opportunities. Like I'll tell you one. At the end of the year, one of the guys in this group of fellas was was complaining about how he doesn't have a girlfriend, and the guys were ribbing him. And he looks at me. And he's like, "Hey, sir, you got any advice for me?" And I'm like, "Just go talk to girls, man. You just got to go talk to them." And he started laughing, and he said, "Hey, girls, come talk to me." And I was like, "See, there you go." And then it was kind of a joke, but we got talking about it, and I laid it out for him. I'm like, "Really, man, it's that simple. You just got to talk to people. Just talk to them, and you'll figure it out. Just don't be afraid to look stupid." And then I hit him with one of the greatest things you can do is find a lady to love and make a family.
Mm.
And I got to say that in like a public school, but it's just like, but I'm lucky because I'm in a red rural town, so everybody's just kind of vibing. They're like, yeah. I was like, dude, that's the greatest thing you can do. So just be patient and talk to girls, and you'll figure it out, man. Everybody figures it out. If I can do it if I can do it, you can do it. You'll be all right. And I think it's just waiting for those moments and then just hitting hard. A good plan violently executed right now is far better than a perfect plan next week. You kind of just have
Right.
to have that attitude, almost Shogun Samurai like attitude. I will wait for my opportunity, and then I will be so fucking lethal, I'll take your head off. So I
Right.
don't know. I guess what I'm saying is you have to be Gandalf.
Right. But you're absolutely right. And here's the thing. When we have these conversations about what to tell young men,
Yeah.
there's always a very materialistic kind of approach to this whole thing, right?
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
the problem, and there was a big X poster that kind of had like a little bit of a breakdown. If you think a few days ago, his name was like Home Math or something like that. He's like, I'm 40 and life's over, blah blah. I'm not married and that kind of stuff. The question is, what is the like? Okay, first of all, let's lay out one truth. Okay, we're gonna lay out one truth that's actually two truths in one, right? And tell me if you disagree. We live in a very, very difficult time for young men. Okay. We live in a world where the economic superpower of the United States is waning. We have immigration problems. We have crime problems. We have educational system is in shambles, and the meaning of the credentials and the credentialism that we're mired in is falling apart. Our divorce laws are completely ludicrous and counterproductive towards the foundational concepts of building a family. Our communities are falling apart. All this stuff, right? This is a fact. We're not going to deny that, right? But we also live at a great time, okay? Because for one, well, first of all, nobody's murdering you right now. Okay. We are not we're not Christians in the Roman Empire getting hunted and murdered. All right. Or thrown to lions or persecuted. We're not Christians in communist Russia, 50 years ago. We're not Russians in communist Russia 50 years ago. Okay. Or
Yeah.
Romania or we don't live through the pains and deprivations of, living during oppressive communist government, like Russia, Ceausescu, or Mao Zedong during the Cultural Revolution, or Pol Pot in Cambodia, or any of that stuff. We are fortunate in the West to be born in the West. We won the genetic location lottery in a way, right? Because I'm not born in Uganda or somewhere where there's child soldiers and people macheting each other to death if they're not dying of HIV, right? So
Yeah.
take some fucking perspective, young man. You know what I mean? Right? Yeah, it's rough. It sucks. It's not like it is for your boomer parents, who had it easy. That's a fact, right? But you know what? Their parents didn't have it easy because they were living through the Dust Bowl. You know what I mean? And they had to put all their possessions in the back of some jalopy and go west to California so they can be freaking almond farmers for pennies a day. So let's just put perspective, okay? You're not living in Dresden getting firebombed. You're not living in Hiroshima and Nagasaki getting freaking nuclear bombed. You're you're not living in Stalingrad during the World War II, right? So let's put shit in a little bit into perspective. Yes, shit sucks, but it's not the worst it's ever been, and it's not the worst that it will ever be. All right, and ultimately, right? What do you want? Is it just material? Do you just want a wife? Right? Well, do you deserve a wife? You know what I mean? Like it's one of these things. You see these guys going, "Oh yeah, the divorce laws are horrible. Like I'm going to marry this girl and then she's going to divorce me and take all my stuff." Well, maybe you married the wrong person then, man. You know what I mean? Like maybe you made the wrong choice. Maybe be the kind of person that the wife doesn't divorce. Then we say, oh, all women are evil and they're going to take all your stuff. Well, my wife is not divorcing me. It's been 14 years so far. You know what I mean? There's nothing special about me. I'm kind of a freaking, kind of a bum sometimes, right? I know tons of guys that have made it to 20 years in their marriages. I know lots of young people. I'm going to two weddings this summer, and both of the people they're getting married, both of the guys are 22 years old, right? Like, come on, man. You need.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't. It's just you're making me think here. When it comes to the material realities, we certainly live in a advantageous time, 100%.
Right,
When it comes to the spiritual realities, I would suggest that we may be in a uniquely difficult time. I really don't want to say that though, because I really don't know much about previous, ages. Um, but I think in a way we're fortunate because there are solutions to the spiritual ailments.
right,
The essence is still there to get plugged back into. It can still be the garden is out there for you to discover. Like it's not anything that can be taken from you. I mean, it's not like, it's not like the atomic bomb going off in Nagasaki where blink, that's it. I mean, that's the physical inevitability. You know what I mean? Or like, there's no food, so we're all starving to death and there's nothing to be done.
right,
Like it's a deeper, there's a reason why suicide is one of the biggest problems for young men right now because their lives are hopeless. Well, there are everything's falling apart, baby. Let's go. You can just
right,
do things. I
right.
think that's another thing that I've been able to say to many young men in my classes this year. Fellas, you can just do things. Just
Well,
just go just go do the thing that's right. Just don't ask permission. Ask forgiveness if necessary.
the reason there are so many hopeless people is because there is no moral north, right?
Yeah, there's
It
no
is
direction to go.
because we are disconnected from the divine, right? Because the divine gives one
Yes.
purpose in life, all right? And all the advice, all the stuff we tell young men is material, 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 material. And we tell men, oh, you need to level up, you need to work out, you need to min max your life and stuff, right? But what we're telling him is basically the male bro equivalent of eat, pray, love, you know, right? Because
Oh,
that's what a lot of people are upset at is that they just want to travel the world, sleep with
yeah.
hoes, and party. And why don't I have that? You know,
Yeah.
or I want to get married and live like a hobbit in this beautiful house and have and work on my spreadsheet. Well, I'm sorry, man, but like that's just not how it is. So what are you going to do? Just sit down and cry about it? Like yeah, it sucks. Get up, get up, you know, just go, but find some spiritual ground, whether it's
Exactly.
whether it's Christianity or some form of paganistic belief or Buddhism, or I don't know, whatever, Shintoism or something, right? Like, you know what? Okay, so you can't find a girl? Oh, tough shit. Throughout history, hundreds of thousands, millions of men have not been married. Garden, all right, garden. Become the best. Pray all day. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like you have to be something. You have to connect yourself to the earth around you. And I guarantee you, if you do that, you don't have to go find a girl because she'll come to you. Right?
Yeah.
You have to.
That's
You know what I mean?
that's ultimately what I want to tell young man is that you might have been told all your life that you're toxic. You might have been told all your life that you're some sort of misogynist. You've been told to feel shame and guilt for being a man. You've been shamed and made to feel guilty about being an American or a Westerner. And it's a lot of shit. It's all shit. You are a child of God. You are a
Absolutely.
divine being. You are a manifestation of Adam Kadmon. If everybody is tearing you down, the thing to do is to lift yourself up to the highest standard you can imagine and fulfill that divine essence that you have within you. And then all that material stuff will come, but you got to get your spirit in right, the right place, basically.
Right. Because
Yeah.
suffering is not evil. Okay.
Suffering is good, actually.
All right. Suffering.
Suffering brings character.
Right.
Yeah, it sure does.
Your goal is not to become comfortable. Your goal is not to become happy. What is happy? Right? We can't be happy. Happiness is a temporary, fleeting state because no amount of money, no amount of wealth, no amount of anything is going to ever truly make you happy all the time. All right. So you need to accept that you're going to suffer, accept that you're going to have hardship, and your goal, your spiritual direction should be to transcendence. You have to transcend that suffering. Some of the world's greatest works of art have been created by people suffering and then
Hmm.
transcending that suffering. Okay. Nobody is like born with everything they want and they have all their eat, pray, love, sleep with all the girls, all this party stuff, and does anything of value to a certain degree. You have to transcend a challenge, something there, and you know what? These are the challenges of our world. They're economic and they're spiritual and they're cultural, and we have to transcend them, right? If you accept that the world is messed up culturally and spiritually, what do you want? You want to buy a wife? You know what I mean? You want to buy a girlfriend? People go, oh, the you know the dating market's messed up. Everybody's on what do you call it, on Tinder, right? Well, don't be on Tinder then, dude. You know what I mean? Be the guy that's not on Tinder. You'll find a girl that's not on Tinder. You know what I mean? Like some of
I,
these some of these young guys act like all this shit's new. Like that shit existed when I was a 20-year-old. All right, Tinder came out when
yeah.
I was like a 26-year-old. We had OK Cupid and we had Plenty of Fish and we had all those dating things and all the hoe bags were there. Right? I just didn't go on them, because that's what it is. You don't meet people. The kind of like if you don't want to meet a slut, then don't go on the slut app. How about that? Oh, but then I'll never meet any girls. Well, okay, that's fine.
But you got to go outside and talk to them, man. You got to be
Yeah,
like,
no,
yo,
but
what,
even if
what's
you
up?
don't meet any girls, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Because even if you think that those people are bad and they're going to treat you bad or they're going to cheat or all that stuff, right? Why do you want to meet them in the first place? Right? It's not going to make you happy. So just go do something else. Go freaking garden. Go grow potatoes. I don't know. You know what I mean? Go do something. And you might, by the grace of God, meet somebody that is not on Tinder. You know?
So you mentioned that in the introduction that I'm the chief guardian of the Octagon Society Order of Spiritual Alchemy. And you
Okay.
mentioned happiness. And one of the things that we teach about happiness is that it's balanced with sadness. We also think of joy balanced with fear and anger balanced with peace. And a way of looking at that is the soul knows peace, joy, and happiness. It doesn't really know sadness, fear, and anger. Sadness, fear, and anger is mostly about being in the body. As humans, we feel a lot of sadness, fear, and anger. But learning to balance sadness with happiness, fear and joy, and anger and peace, if you can feel anger, if you can feel fear, and you can feel sadness, then you can feel happiness and joy and peace. It's not about being peaceful all the time or joyful all the time or happy all the time. It's about simply being able to feel that in the same way that you can feel sadness, fear, and anger. And so when you talk about transcending, the material and the self, one of the ways of thinking about that is like my divine self, my soul, uh, feels peace, joy, and happiness. And so I can too. And I should embrace that.
Right. Right.
I
And
like that. I like that because it reminds me of how you can then open the door to things like duty and sacrifice
Mhm.
and service. One of the things that really helped me over the past few years was exploring that imperial ideal. The idea that yeah, there's God and the divine, but that the city of God, the empire, Rome, it's something tangible that I can serve and work towards, even though it may not come to fruition until long after I'm gone. That is an incredibly powerful thing. And when I share that with students, it's one of my after I teach them how to fight elephants, the whole Punic Wars and everything. After I teach them how to fight elephants, I start making the joke, not joke, of all right, kids, time to die for the empire. Let's go. And I'm kind of kidding, but I'm also kind of not, in so much as there is a greater sacrifice to be made, and there's something greater that you can do beyond just, you know, look up hoe bags on the slut app.
Right, right. Well, and then like I said, when we say this, right? Because interestingly enough, well, not interestingly, because I knew we were all going to be on the same page with this, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to downplay, the genuine loneliness and suffering of many people. Trust me, man, as a 42-year-old man, I am disconnected from a lot of my old friends, and it's very hard to, male loneliness is a true thing. It's a real thing that even us married guys see, and,
Yeah.
and it's hard to have friends, and the world is just allied against us in a way. And what we have to accept, okay, and this is, I'm going to get metaphysical here a little bit, right? Is that there is evil in the world, right? There is undeniable evil, and it's materialistic evil. And what we have to do, and that evil causes suffering, and we have to be able to transcend it, okay? We have to face it, and we have to let it, we have to push through it. We have to take it and just grow through it. We have to go, these are the challenges that the universe has placed before me, all right? A fallen world where evil is real and it's a corruption of good, right? Because that's what evil is, guys, right? Evil is a corruption of good, right? Evil is like the orcs in Lord of the Rings, which were once elves.
Inversion. Yeah,
Right.
inversion. Yeah.
Right, an inversion, right? It's not the opposite. Keep this in mind, okay? Evil is not the opposite of good, right? Because that would be a Gnostic kind of belief. And I'm not going to disagree with you, whatever you believe, Hunter, right? But from my perspective, evil is not the opposite of good, all right? Because to say that evil is the opposite of good, right, it would mean that evil and good are on the same plane. And they're not on the same plane because one candle in the darkness is light, all right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Good is eternally supreme and it exists. Evil in a way
Yeah.
does not exist. It is a perversion. It is a downgrade. And what I mean by that is, for example, like rape. Okay, rape, right, is sex gone bad. Right, sex is beautiful. Rape is sex corrupted. Right, murder. All right, murder and physical violence. That's evil. Is a corruption of non-evil violence, which is strength, right? The strength that you use to murder people is also good because it breaks down rocks with your hammer. It builds buildings. It builds monuments. It builds shelter for people, right? It gives you the strength to lift your child. That's important. It used wrong is evil, right? And you can apply the same thing to, leadership is good. Tyranny is evil, right? And it's leadership perverted, right? Or like true leadership, right? But we have to suffer through the derangement, the degeneration of the world, like, dating, community, all that stuff are so degraded and so evil in our world, but we have to suffer through. And you have to look at the world, and there's people, great people better than me, right, that have suffered immensely and persevered or transcended that suffering, right? So if we say that like it's meaningless, we're never going to win. If we allow ourselves to take on the sin of despair and just say, oh, it's over, I'm going to be a gooner for the rest of my life, I'm just a doomer, I'm just going to sit here and kill myself or whatever, right? What you're saying is that evil is stronger than good. All right, that's what you're saying. And if evil is stronger than good, there's no meaning in the universe, man. All right. And then nothing matters. And if nothing matters, then, then art, life, culture, beauty, family, none of that matters because it's all relative based on pleasure. And then at that point, even if you get everything you want, it's meaningless. All right. And that's how you got to look at it, I think. You need to find that north, right?
You mentioned transcending suffering. You've been talking a lot about that. And that's essentially what we're talking on the Octagon Society about spiritual alchemy. It's about taking suffering and turning it into spiritual gold.
Right.
It's about taking suffering and turning it into character, taking pain, anger, and sadness and turning it into happiness, joy, and peace. You know, and that's in a world, Christians call it a fallen world, and in a sense it is. We're all trapped in the material. We're spiritual beings trapped in the material. In that sense, uh, one of our tasks, one of our primary goals in this world is not to fall to that material, not to collapse into that material, to
Right.
restore and maintain something of that spiritual essence of the soul.
Absolutely, because that's what freedom really is, right?
Hmm.
When you're talking about freedom in a material way, like like John Locke's kind of freedom, or the Enlightenment philosophers, they conceptualize the idea of freedom as this like uh, return to nature type of thing, where everybody does what they want and it's good as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, which is, in a way, libertarian nonsense because it doesn't work like that, right? Every action affects everybody else. But at that point you're not really free because you are a slave to passions. You're a slave to, your vices, your desires, your things. True freedom is being able to decide that I can weather this suffering, I can weather this evil and move forward. I think that to me is really true freedom, is deciding, no, I will not be a drug addict, sit on my couch all day and stare at video games or pornography. I choose not to, right? While our free society is the exact opposite, is a society of gluttonous slavery, and making one a slave to passion and comfort, which is, in a way worse than the worst shackles of hell. And, when you really look at it that way.
And that spiritual freedom is true strength too.
Right.
I mean, it's powerful. And the more you become that, the more powerful you will be in this material world.
Right. Right. So I guess that's our advice to young people, man. It's like, yeah, it sucks. Deal with it. Push through it.
Work it
Find
out.
find your
Hmm.
center, find something. And people will say, oh, but it's hard. No, no, of course it's hard. Of course it's hard, right? But all of us, in a way, we have gifts, right? It's so easy to travel nowadays, right? If you feel trapped in your society, in your city, in your town, well, guess what? Save up a few $100s and move somewhere else and start over, like go find something. Go live on a beach in Hawaii for all it matters, right? Cultivate your spirit first, and then the riches of the world will come to you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because you're never, if you're unhappy as a poor guy living in a city, you're going to be unhappy as a rich guy in the city. All right. It's just the freaking truth, man. All right. It's because the wealth and the material wealth are just, that's all they are. They're material. They're ephemeral, right? They're not true food. They're not true sustenance, right? They're just icing on the cake, right?
And that's
All
why
right. You
liberals
got deep there
are
for a second.
leftists.
Go ahead.
That's why leftists are such miserable people because they have no way of transcending suffering. In fact, they do the opposite. They treat suffering as if it's somehow the ideal.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Well,
what an excellent expression of what hell is. The idea that this is all there
Exactly.
is. That this is all there is and there's no meaning beyond it.
right.
Fuck that. No thanks.
Right. No,
And
I
that's the
mean,
other thing. If you can't transcend suffering, then you will suffer.
right.
Yeah.
You will suffer big time.
Yeah.
Well,
I kind of like surfing on suffering. I think that's actually pretty, you ride the wave and just sort of, hey, suffering is if I'm suffering, that must be a good sign. I must be doing something right.
but here's the thing, right? you will suffer. Okay?
Yeah.
You will suffer. You know why?
Yeah.
Because we're going to die. And some of us are going to die horrible deaths of like ass cancer or something. My grandmother right now is in the hospital. She can't even remember where she is, who she is anymore, right? Like she's suffering. And my father-in-law is sick, on his third rejected kidney. There's suffering. He suffered all his life because he's had kidney failure numerous times. There is suffering in the world. You are going to physically suffer. You're going to emotionally suffer because the ones you love, your wife, your children, God willing, I'll die long before my daughter does, right? But I they're gonna die. Okay, we're all gonna die because we are disconnected from the truth, right? And we're gonna suffer. And you know, it's just how it is. It's the world, whether you are a Christian, a pagan, or just a materialist, that is a fact of the world that the world is suffering to a certain degree. But there's also joy and beauty and family and love, right? Um, a materialist can describe suffering on a material way, and they can, they can describe it as a cause and effect, and they try to focus on the cause and try to eliminate the cause, right? But a materialist cannot describe love, they cannot describe joy because those are so much more complex emotions than suffering. But ultimately, right, little children, they are posed with problems, like discomfort, right? Like, they don't want to go to bed, right? So they start crying. They're crying because they're uncomfortable, and they're suffering because they're uncomfortable because they're tired, right? So they don't know how to like deal with that level of suffering, and we guide them through it, right? And the older you get, the more resilience you build to suffering, right? When you're 3 years old and you're tired, you throw a fit, right? When you're 3 years old or 1 year old and you're hungry, you cry and you wail like it's the end of the world when you're hungry, right? When you're 10 years old, you cry because you don't get your way or something, right? And the older you get, if you have children, you can watch them grow. They become more resilient to the stressors of suffering, but at the same time, you're exposed to more and more and more suffering, right? And we have to be able to build through it, okay? Too many in our world want to get to the point in their lives where they eliminate all friction, all suffering, and that's never going to happen, okay? For example, I'm not a super well achieved, wealthy individual or anything like that, right? But I we have suffering in my life all the time, I have a sick, dying grandmother, a dying father-in-law, right? I don't know what to do about that. My dog keeps on getting sick, and I know she's gonna, not gonna be much longer in this world. My 13-year-old dog, and that's suffering, right? Like I dread even thinking about that, And I know that I'm getting older and my back hurts more and my spine is messed up and I can't do the fun, exciting things I used to do, it's just part of the world, It's just how life is. You're never going to be comfortable perfectly, I'm never going to achieve eat, pray, love, or whatever the fuck, and just, never have friction in my universe, and you just have to kind of accept that, Well, you and I, Fisto, we're getting at that age where, our friends from high school, from elementary school, they're going to start dying on us, right? And
I've
you,
yeah, no, it's funny you say it that like that because I haven't been to any of my high school reunions. So I'm probably gonna go to the 30 year and be like, man, I got news for days to get caught up on. Because I know there's gonna be a bunch of shit that I missed, but it's fine. But yeah, man, you're right. I mean, we're at the age where it's not just like people are gonna be dying, it's a few have already bought the farm.
right. I do
Like
have a lot of,
I just don't know who they are. You
right.
know?
Hey, but you know what? You yourself have unwarranted suffering in your own life with your health issues, Like that's not fair. What are you gonna be? Are you gonna be
Ah,
mad about it and just sit there and die? No.
no.
You're gonna just give up because,
I'm kind of looking for actually now that you frame it like that, I'm kind of looking forward to going to my 30th anniversary or 30th reunion because then I'm going to be like, guys, I'm 10 years, I'm a decade past when I was supposed to buy it. So
Mhm.
let's fucking go. Drinks are on me, boys.
Mhm.
You know, just
Right.
like I mean, I don't get I'm gonna roll in, it's gonna be hilarious. But it's because I've allowed that suffering, I've allowed that suffering to teach me. I've
Right.
not been resentful of it. I know that I mean I study history. People have suffered in ways that I will never imagine.
If you
You
open
know?
if there's a book that's like the history of everything, right? Like from the very, very beginning to now, and every little thing is documented in the world, you open the first page,
Woof.
and right after the prologue, there's suffering. And page two, there's some suffering. And page 100, there's some suffering. And page 150 billion in the history of everything, in the 10 billion years in the future, on that page, there'll be some suffering. It's just the way of the world. And it's not going to end until, you know, you know, the Christian answer, we know when it's going to end. Not when, but we know how it's going to end. But that's how it is, man. The book of our world right now is a book of suffering, a book of tribulations and trials, and we live in a pretty damn good section of it. The water's pretty freaking calm for us right now. At least us living in the West and the richest country in the world. We're sitting here talking about it on the internet. I'm not dead. There's not a cruise missile flying over my head yet. And it's pretty good, man. And all we can do is go out there in the world that God's given us and participate, man. Participate, because that's what matters. You got to get out there and be in that play, right? Be in that play and enjoy your community, enjoy the people around you, right? Enjoy that joy you have from being around them. Go to that church, go to that temple or the shrine or that picnic after whatever event, you got to do it, right? And yes, the world is messed up. And it is our job to point out how it's messed up, right? Us commentators on the internet, us commentators through literature and through through art, right? But we got to offer solutions, guys. Okay, we can't just be Denethor constantly,
Mhm.
all right? And we cannot burn our children on the pyres, all right, like he did. Well, he attempted to do, because you got to look to the east, man, because Gandalf will come. All right. And it's just, but you know what I mean? Right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was trying, like, last week I was getting into it with the Doomers, I was getting into it with the Doomers and I was just like, blah, blah. And I felt dirty and gross. I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to type it up again. Oh, no, I'm not going to answer this. I don't want to. I finally just said, no, I'm done, and thank God I had stuff to do, and I went to Charleston and we celebrated the Ascension, right? And if for you non-Christians, the Ascension is when God rose up into heaven, right? And he showed himself to all the disciples and everything, right? And um, we celebrated with our parent church basically because they're called the Church of Holy Ascension. So that's like their special feast day. And this is a Thursday, guys. Okay, this is a Thursday. All right, Thursday, working day, non-holiday. We go out there. I take the day off from work, and we walk into this place at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it is packed. All right, this Orthodox church, and Orthodox is very small denominations in the United States, right? And we walk into the church, and it is packed. And I expected it to be because Charleston's a pretty big city. I expected to be a bunch of geezers, okay? Like, oh my God, it's going to be a bunch of old people, a bunch of old Greeks or something like that. No. It was all Americans. And it was almost 60 to 70% of the people were couples with children younger than me. All right. And the joy I felt, the joy I felt in sharing the liturgy with, being around and like doing this thing together with all these people that share the same beliefs. And they had this huge party and it was all like Southern themed because they had like a contra dance and everything afterwards and like a barbecue and all this stuff or like a grill thing with pulled pork and everything. And it was this beautiful place. And I was just like, wow, this is what life is about. Sharing it with people and children. And, we had old people, but we had children running around everywhere. And I was like, Yeah, this is it. We had our friends of the podcast show up that have never been to church before, at least this kind of church, joining me. We had all this amazing stuff. And, the next day I had a different experience, which was in a way very similar. Well, actually 2 days later. And I go to my daughter's dance recital, and she goes to this dance studio, and it's kids from, 4-year-olds all the way to high school seniors. And they do competitive dance, but they also do just all sorts of different dance, right? And these kids, their instructor is this amazing young woman. I think I would say she's like 26, between 26 and 30, right? And she's this amazing young woman that loves these kids, and they spend so much time rehearsing, writing these routines, practicing, doing all this stuff. And they put on this show in this huge auditorium that costs too much money to rent. And they did it with so much love and so much care, from the costumes to the music to the dances that they coordinated themselves, over the last year. And to just see the artistry and the love of each other and like the art of dance and the art of music, I was like brought to tears, because I was like, this is the future, man. You know what I mean? I felt almost the same experience I did in the church at that dance, because I was like, this is what life is about: beauty, art, culture, family, togetherness, community, right? And then you go online and it's just doomers about racism and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, shut the fuck up. I don't know. That's how I feel.
Everything you just mentioned is essentially like a ritual of banishment of evil spirits.
Right.
Kimberly Steele, Substacker Kimberly Steele just wrote a post about banishing rituals. And one thing she mentioned, she showed a picture like a traditional Orthodox church. And the literal structure of an Orthodox church is like a banishing totem. It banishes evil spirits. It banishes demons. And so when people come together, like you just described, that is a ritual of like keeping away the darkness.
My shut up retard is a banishment thing.
Right.
Evil spirits.
It's an incantation of banishment.
Yes.
I'm looking at our post right now.
Get behind me, retard.
Well, yeah, what's interesting, when you get baptized in the Orthodox Church, the priest actually breathes on you, right? And it's actually an exorcism. It's an exorcism ceremony to get rid of the demons and the evil, And it's been done for almost 2,000 years in that way, right? Actually, it's probably been done much longer than that, because it goes back to God breathing life into Adam, right? But yeah, that you're right. That's exactly what it is, right? Like we are talking about, like, you have to find this joy. You have to find this purpose, whether it's spiritual. Well, it's all spiritual, okay? So whether it's art, music, writing, like if you're an unhappy man right now, living in, a young man, I tell you, you know what? Go buy a guitar, dude, and play guitar. Yes. Find music. Or that's not for you. Yeah. Right. That's not for you. Then go. Then I don't know. Go write. Okay. Write. Create something beautiful. Create something like has energy, that has power in it. Or whether it's like art or music. Just do it, man. Just do it, right? And dedicate your life to that. Okay. Not finding hoes. All right. Not finding pleasure, but meaning. That's what you got to find. Okay. Because look at these guys. What's that? What are those mutants in the news recently?
Mutants in the news.
The Bankman guy and his goblin girlfriend or whatever.
Oh, that's back in the news?
Yeah, it's back in the news because, like, I think
that's a whole. God, what was that?
Bankman Fried, and it was that whole like pyramid scheme thing they were doing. Right?
All right.
And these are guys that are spiritually bankrupt, right? But they have all the wealth they could ever imagine. They had more wealth than any of us will ever have ever if me and you, all three of us combined all our income for the rest of our lives and multiplied it by 1 million, we still wouldn't match the wealth of that guy and his goblin girlfriend. Okay. I mean, I don't know about you, Hunter, but I'm pretty broke. So, right. Please like and subscribe and donate money to.
Everything I own in this world wouldn't add up to a fancy car, basically.
Right. I don't know, you know? So, right. But look at them. They're fucking mutants, guys. They're mutants. They're not happy. All right. They're having gross fucking orgies with each other and just bumping uglies, like literally and figuratively, you know? Like there's nothing there.
All day.
Right? I wouldn't trade my life right now for all their wealth and all for their life. I would not want that, you know? I don't want to be Andrew Tate. I don't want to be some online pimp that everybody hates and you know what I mean? Like, God, guys, like build.
My soul is more important to me than money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So like here's some ideas, okay? Let's look at some like basic practical ideas, right? Wake up in the morning, right? And this is corny. It's like your Jordan Peterson make your bed type of thing, right? But sometimes we need that stuff, right? Yeah, and make your freaking bed, all right? Or fuck it, sleep on the floor sometimes. You know what I mean? It's good for you, all right? Like sleep on the dirt, sleep outside if you need to, all right? Get some, become one with nature, go camping, all right? And don't tell me you don't have money to do that because we all have money for a freaking cheap tent and a car ride out to the mountains or something, okay? Because I knew I was broke as hell growing up and I could afford to go camping. But you know what? Do something, make something. Whether you're going to garden or you're gonna clean the house, do the freaking dishes or something like that. Do something that like create something for at least an hour.
Do my dishes.
Right?
My dishes.
No, create something for at least an hour a day. Cook or learn something or do something that you're making or learning. Okay. Then do something for somebody else, man. All right. Do something for the community, or do something nice or you live with your parents, do something nice for your mom or clean the bathroom or something like that. All right. And then do something physical. All right. We are not separate from our bodies. Our bodies are part of us, right? We are body and soul together. Right. So we need to take care of the physical just as much as we need to take care of the spiritual. So go lift something, be out in the sun, get that vitamin D, get that fresh air, get that breath of God into you, and do those three. Man, you just aim to do those every day and you will be a happier person. I guarantee you. All right. I guarantee you that an hour spent gardening or an hour spent playing the guitar will make you much happier than that same hour spent trolling the internet or playing Call of Duty, man. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's all. It's simple. It's one step at a time, Spit out that Zen, bro, drop that vape in the trash where it belongs and go out and fucking go for a run. Push yourself a little bit. All right? And if you can't, well, you're lying. All right? Do some push-ups if you're paralyzed or something. You know what I mean? Like everybody can do something physical. Push yourself to a physical limit and push yourself to an artistic limit every single freaking day. All right. And eventually you will get the spiritual rewards for that kind of stuff. All right. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be out there like spreadsheet maxing and like pimping on girls or whatever. All right. Do it in your bedroom if you need to. And go outside.
Speaking of spiritual practice, one thing I do every single day, every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to bed is say a short prayer of gratitude.
Absolutely.
Just the simple act of showing some gratitude for even being here, having this opportunity to live this life goes a long ways to like spiritual peace and strength.
Right.
And setting up the terms for like having a better outlook on life generally.
Right. Because we need to, that's actually the fourth thing I forgot to mention. Have a spiritual practice, right? In Orthodox, in an Orthodox church, we call it our prayer rule, right? And when it's different for everybody, this is not a rule as in like you have to follow this or you're going to hell type of thing. No. It's your own personal thing, but you're supposed to do it every day. It has to be a lived practice, a lived participation. All right.
Yeah.
Because we live in the spiritual as much as we live in the material, yet we ignore the spiritual every day. So every day, thank God or do your own religious practice, but do it, right? Connect yourself to the divine somehow through your spiritual practice. Even if it's like 10 minutes, even if it's a prayer before bed or a prayer first thing in the morning before you go out and, greet the day, just do it, right? Do it, you know, just participate. Okay.
If
Participate.
you're gonna have a sense of enchantment of the world, you have to cultivate that enchantment. You can cultivate that enchantment by doing that daily ritual, whatever it is,
Right. Right.
prayer or just gardening or playing the guitar, whatever it is.
Right. Because, you, I love that you use the word cultivate, right?
Hmm.
Because so much of our modern world and the advice people get and give and that kind of stuff, it they would say, "Oh, you need to do this. You need to do this and this and this," but it's not. It's framed in a very engineering from like very engineering kind of perspective, right? As in, if you do this, this, and this will happen. If you do these inputs, this result will happen, right? And the universe is not an engineering problem, okay? We don't live in a mechanistic universe. We live in a spiritual universe, right? And
Yes.
life is not an engineering problem. All right, it's not a physics problem. It's not, a chemistry problem. It's not an engineering problem. Life is a gardening experience. All right. It's about cultivating, not engineering something. Okay. You can't engineer life. You can cultivate life. Right.
Hmm.
And that's how you need to like kind of reframe your thought pattern to how you approach life is that I'm going to plant these seeds and I'm going to do my best to help them grow. All right.
Hmm.
You want community? Well, you got to plant the seeds of community and you have to be the water, you have to be the sun, you have to be the nutrients for that plant to grow. You want a family? Well, you got to plant those seeds and you got to nurture it and you got to grow it, You want any of that stuff, it needs to be done. And sometimes, you know what? The seed doesn't take. It doesn't germinate. It doesn't sprout. Well, you can plant another seed in another season, right? And you have to, you are true freedom is being the gardener of your own garden, if that makes sense. Like, you said you garden. That's a lot of work, man. And sometimes it fails. Sometimes no matter what you do, freaking deer is going to come and eat that shit. You know what I mean? How many deer do you get eating all your stuff all the time?
Oh my God! In my orchard, I've got two fences around the fruit trees because they would devour everything if they could get in.
Right.
I've got sheep next to my garden. If that fence were to fail, one sheep in that garden would basically destroy that garden in a hurry.
Right. But and that's how life
Mhm.
is. That's how life is. The sheep, the wolves, the deer, the fire ants are out there. They're all going to come for your garden, and you got to grow it, cultivate it, and protect it, and nourish it. Okay, that's life.
And the other thing too is you can plant trees that are going to bear fruit or nuts long past your existence.
Right.
And so, in that sense, you're also cultivating not just your own basis for nutrient, but you're cultivating for future generations.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. I like that cultivating for the future generation thing. I'm building a library in my classroom. That's probably my garden. And
Mm.
every year I add maybe half a dozen books to it. And like summer school was going on and they were using my room and I sent an email to the lady doing it. I was like, look, the books are there for kids to read. I'd prefer they leave them in the room so I can, keep the collection going. But whatever happens, happens. If a sheep wanders in and grabs a couple and I never see them again, well, so be it. They're meant to be read. And yeah, it's just that long term. And this stuff takes time. I think that's something else that just gets lost in the secular, it's right now because you might die tomorrow. It's like, no, just relax a second.
Right.
You got to pause and listen. I've that's been my spiritual practice, you could say. When I wake up in the morning, I don't do anything. I simply lay there and I just listen and I just exist. And I'll step outside maybe, or once I start my cup of coffee, but like I'm quiet. I don't check my phone, don't look at nothing. It's just me in existence.
Well, God speaks
Listen to
to
my
you in the
body, listen to
silence.
yeah. Oh my God, solitude. Earlier you mentioned how just lonely things are, and I don't know if this is my personality or if it's something that I've simply cultivated over the decades, but learn to like find things to like about yourself, find things to think about, find things, fill your mind with interesting ideas and good higher true north concepts, because the solitude will reward you. You'll end up seeking it more. You won't want to just be around people all the day to fill the noise. You'll be like, I'm just going to go for a walk and I'm just going to see where I end up.
Right.
Proper hobbit behavior.
Right. And I guarantee you that if you go outside in a park or in the woods or in the mountains and you sit down
Neighborhoods. Yeah.
anywhere, if you go
Yeah.
anywhere and you sit down, you won't be alone. Just close
Well,
your
there's
eyes
all
and
kinds of
listen.
stuff everywhere.
You
Yeah.
are not alone. Okay. You are
Yeah.
not alone. And that's that's the thing, like give up on the chase for the material passions and look for the silences, look for the trees and the green and the community and that kind of stuff. And I don't know, man, like sometimes it feels like it is easy for me to say that and it's easy for us, but for listeners, I guarantee you, man, I am not living this great life. I mean, I love my life, but it wasn't easy to get where I got here whatsoever. And it's not going to be easy to keep it. It's not going to be, but you just got to enjoy every moment. You got to enjoy even the bad parts in a way. You got to be like, but I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I'm still seeing the beauty of the sun every day, you know? And you got to cultivate it, right? Sometimes that garden gets trampled and you just got to start building it, planting it again, right? You got to sow and reap, right? All right, Hunter, man, we've been talking for over 2 hours. Before we go, do you recommend any books or media or anything you love and you want to share with us?
Well, I've been reading a lot of Dion Fortune lately. She's wrote a lot of nonfiction books, but also a lot of fiction. And if you want to know anything about the magical tradition of Western magic, the study of Western traditional magic, then her uh, or fiction books are quite useful for that. Also, John Michael Greer is a great writer that I very much appreciate and am friendly with, and so anything of his is worth looking into. And if anybody wants to look into the Octagon Society, I've got stuff on my own Substack and point you in that direction. So
Dion Fortune, if I
I'm very
remember
grateful for
if I
that.
remember correctly, right? Dion Fortune was a theosophist, right?
No, she was a member of the Golden Dawn, but then she started her own society called, I think, the Society of the Inner Light. Um, but she probably was friendly with some theosophists. Yeah.
Okay. It, you know what? Do you have more time? Do you guys have a little bit more time?
Sure.
I got like another 10, 15. Yeah. Then I got to
Okay.
eat some dinner, but other than that, I'm
I
all right.
I want to actually I want to talk about your pagan beliefs, man. Could you one of the beefs I've had with the online pagan crowd, right, is that they don't have anything, they don't. I ask them like, okay, so cool. So what do you believe?
Sorry, you're breaking up there a little bit, buddy.
Okay, I'm sorry, right? I ask them like, what do you believe, man? And there's no answer. Like, what do you practice? And there's no answer, right? And I ask these questions a lot of times tongue in cheek because I am pretty well read on a lot of occult groups, specifically of the 20th century, like Theosophy. And, I know who Dion Fortune is. I've never read any of her stuff, but I know who she is. I know who most of the people in the Golden Dawn, and I'm pretty familiar with Aleister Crowley and that whole scene. Um, so like I know all that stuff, right? So I want their answer, and I never get an answer. But I want to know what when you say you're a pagan, what do you mean by that, Hunter?
So, um, my basic outlook on the universe and time and all that, there's one creator. There's one divine being that created everything. Our solar system was essentially created by a sentience that we know as the sun, and it has evolved over a very long period of time, and human beings have become part of that. Or we are our body is a part of that, and so our soul is eternal. We come back again and again and again in an evolutionary process as we evolve as spiritual beings. And in that sense, then the sun is the chief sentience in the solar system, and all the planets have their own sentience. They are essentially like gods. Um, but in that sense, they're all dependent upon and derivative of, in the sense of the one fundamental divine being creator at the center of it all. And so this is a process of like growing spiritually. To me, this is a spiritual universe. It's not a physical universe, like you say. There are many different uh, planes of reality. And in some sense, physical reality is just as real as, or astral, the astral realm, which is the realm of dreams and imagination and creativity in a way, is just as real, in a sense, as this material world. And so, to me, the mystery of this existence is very manifold. And there's a great deal to be learned about what it is to be human that has been hidden from us, and that a lot of people just aren't ready to even uh, address or look at. And for most people, like Christianity is a strong foundation for most people. Christianity is a very fine way to like order a society. There's no sense of like a pagan religion rising in America anytime soon. Pagans can talk all they want about pagan imperialism or whatever, but I don't see anything like that arising. If that ever arises here, that's going to be like hundreds of years down the road. John Michael Greer thinks that sometime around 500 years from now, there will be a civilization that is wholly American, not Western. So I kind of hold on to that. Like we're the seeds of that. This discussions like this are the seeds of that. Yeah, I mean that's kind of in a nutshell.
Okay, I'm familiar with John Michael Greer actually. I have some of his books behind me as we're sitting here. Now he's a guy with a beard, right? He's got a beard, and
Big area.
yeah,
Hmm.
I think I've encountered a lot of his stuff on YouTube and on X and stuff. I
He's
think he
somewhat autistic too. He like can't drive a car, or has never driven a car because he just can't focus long enough to drive a car. He'd be a danger to himself and everybody else. But he also like maintains two different blogs, like comments on almost everybody's comment, and then somehow manages to write like 5 or 6 books a year. It's crazy.
right. He's like a pagan holy man sort of guy, you know.
Holy math, basically, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, so what is like what is the like the community and the participation element of your belief system, you know?
There is almost none, in the sense that uh, the Octagon Society is like, I've never met anybody in the Octagon Society. There probably aren't more than a couple hundred people in all the world who are members of the Octagon Society, and most of them don't have any idea who the other ones are. There are no meeting halls. Uh, there's no coming together for conferences. Maybe someday there will be, but not currently. There are pagan groups like John Michael Greer considers himself a druid, uh, and there are many people in America, many more people in America who consider themselves druids, and they do come together for ritual and gatherings of various kinds. Um, but in terms of like again ordering a society, there's just not possible, not anytime, based on the people who are pagan in America at this point.
Right.
But they're all on their own spiritual journey, and for the most part, they tend to believe in one fundamental creator, and for the most part, they're doing good work in the world. They're just doing it very quietly.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, for us Christian guys, we look at at Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and those guys, and they're part of the Inklings, and one of the most interesting of the Inklings, right? Which Inklings, for you guys that are not familiar with, was the kind of like the bar group, the bar hopping group of the C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien crowd, and used to meet up in this bar and sit around and talk about books and I don't know, made up languages and the Greeks and classics and stuff. One of the most interesting ones out of that group was actually Owen Barfield, who was himself kind of a pagan, right? He was a anthroposophist or whatever. Um, I'm horrible at it, right? But
Yeah.
he was very much in kind of the same occult kind of theosophy and kind of circle that a lot of the guys you mentioned kind of fall like they're connected to like Rudolf Steiner and
Mhm.
the kind of like the new spiritual religious movement in the 20th century. And he was really best friends with C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis himself, if you guys read one of his best nonfiction books, which is called Surprised by Joy, which is kind of like his biography. It's like his Christian testimonial. He himself was a bit of a pagan. He came to Christianity not through an atheism or through uh, that kind of angle. He came to Christianity through paganism. So I really find that whole kind of movement very interesting.
One of the things that Greer is doing right now is going through the work of William Butler Yeats, his book called The Vision. William Butler Yeats was a member of the Golden Dawn,
Right.
and his wife was like a spiritual medium who did a technique called automatic writing. And so The Vision is something of a discussion about that from an occult perspective, about her writing that she did in that practice. And it said that a lot of his ideas and his poetry came from her automatic writing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth. I mean, Greer's going to spend like the next 2 years going through that, like once a month, basically.
Right.
So it might be something of interest to people who are interested in that sort of thing.
Well, what's interesting is that, some of those guys like Yeats, who, if you guys are not familiar with Yeats, William Butler Yeats, he's probably one of the best poets of all time, in my opinion. Um,
Mhm.
those guys were from the late 19th century, early 20th century era, and you see an explosion of spirituality in these guys, right?
Yep.
And I think where does it come from? Like what if you look at the you know the surrealist painters, the neo-romantics, the um, the romantics themselves, which are a little bit earlier, but the pre-Raphaelites and that entire artistic kind of era, you get a huge resurgence of like Christian mysticism and Christianity on one end, and then you have a very neo-religious kind of like explosion, like the occultist interest in what we consider occult kind of stuff, but they're not really
Mhm.
occult because occult means hidden, right? It doesn't really, it's like the word pagan, it doesn't really mean anything, right? Um,
Mhm.
but and I think that
Cult is very specific.
right, right. I think that's a reaction to, really the death of the Enlightenment and to the Industrial Revolution, or the peak of
Yes,
Industrial
exactly.
Revolution, and they could feel the disenchantment of the world happening around them. Those guys,
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, what is the
Exactly.
Lord of the Rings, man? The Lord of the Rings is is J.R. Tolkien, shouting at the sky against British English disenchantment and freaking industrialization, the destruction of the Shire of his England, the Green England, like
Mhm.
in the real world the orcs won. Saruman did destroy the Shire and turn it into an industrial wasteland, and all these guys were very into naturalism and what do you call it, conservation and a lot of that stuff, because they were fighting against those early, like, 20th century destruction of the spirit. So I find it
Yeah,
fascinating.
that period of the late 19th century and the industrialization, but then also bookended by World War II or World War One.
Right,
It was a very brutal time. Uh, but then also then you have it sort of occult studies sort of disappeared towards the middle of the 19th century or 20th century. And now we've seen something of a resurgence of it because of all the tumult in the world now. Uh, all of our traditions have been undone. The world is a massively polluted, literally, place. Our minds are polluted by media. Everything about modern life is disconcerting. And so you see a rise, and Greer has talked about that too, where like whenever there's a lot of tumult, then you get more spiritual interest. And so it's sort of like the uh, Spengler's second religiosity, in a sense, where like uh, the society is in a general state of collapse, and so people trend towards spiritual foundations to give
right,
them a sense of meaning in the world.
right. I mean, look, it all makes sense, right? Because
Mhm.
you had the Age of Enlightenment, right? And Enlightenment promised man that through reason and through um, through logic and through the sciences and all these material things will make the world a better place. We're gonna set back. We're gonna put away all the spiritual stuff of the Middle Ages, and we're gonna put away all the superstitions and all the demons and the darkness and all that stuff. We're gonna put it all away, and we're gonna make a great world. And we're gonna use science, and we're gonna industrialize, and we're gonna create a much better world run by like logical, rational men, right? Rational was the word, right? And what did that get us? It got us the freaking trenches of World War One and the bloodshed of World War Two. That's what we got. We got more death, suffering, and murder and just horrors on earth, hell on earth in World War Two and one and two than in the history of mankind. And this was supposed to be the age of reason, the age of rationalism, men finally separate from the spiritual superstitions. So of course you get people wanting to return or wanting to realize that no, maybe there is more to life, because this is what we got. We got Stalin, Hitler, freaking bombers with nuclear bombs on them and all this stuff, and I think after the World War II, I think we gave them another chance. We gave the rationalists another chance. We said we're going to move into the nuclear age, right? But the nuclear age was evil, right? Got a light, Fisto? You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
buddy.
Right? It
Whoopsies.
was evil, right? Because we tried to be gods, right? We tried to break the atom to be, to be like gods, and even leave the planet and move, and like our arrogance and our hubris, right? And in the '90s, we were promised that through these Star Trek philosophies, these like progressive philosophies. We're going to make a better world where everybody's going to love each other. And if we just get rid of all the stupid asses from back in the day and we get rid of all their idiotic ideas, we're going to live peacefully and happy. But we're not. It sucks, right? So yeah, of course, we're going to go back to religion. Whether it's pagan spirituality, Christianity, or the scary ones like Islam and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. It's like not a shocker at all.
Eliphas
I have a
Levi,
question.
mid 19th century, said that the true science is the unification of reason and faith. That's where like reason and logic and all that went wrong. It tried to abandon faith. But Eliphas Levi in the early industrial age was basically saying the true science is reason and faith unified, which is basically saying like earth and the divine unified. And so I think that's probably a great challenge for the ascendant right is try to unify that somehow, reason, logic, and faith.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hey, I have a question, Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Only because it's kind of it's professionally interesting to me. How do you think the geography of North America plays any kind of role in the sort of in the pagan faiths or the occult? Does it have any
Rob,
kind of influence or any kind of draw that like makes that pushes people in one direction or the other, or however you might think about that?
Greer talks about an energy in this North American continent that will give rise to its own civilization someday.
Hmm.
The poet Robert Bly, who's from around these parts, talked much about the same sort of thing from a perspective of a poet. And so I think there absolutely is like an energy in the soil, an energy in the land that has given us that something of that genius that we talked about earlier, that unique American way, but will give rise to something much greater than this. This is just like you mentioned, Fisto, that this is like we're still young. We're a young
Yeah.
civilization. We've got a long way to go, and we're going to go through hell to get to that, but it will come. And I think early on in American history, particularly in the late 19th century and early 20th century, it was a hotbed of spiritual thinking. Johnny Appleseed was this spiritualist. Part of what he went around planting trees everywhere, fruit, apple trees, but he was also, proselytizing his spiritual ways to the frontiers people. And so it's always been an undercurrent in America. Druidism essentially was revived in this land. So I'm convinced that new gods will arise for Americans, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take it's a long process.
Hmm. How do you think that relates to? How do you think that might relate to Christianity? And specifically, I'm thinking of the Roman Catholic Church. I live in an area with tons of Latins, and I
Mm.
think about how the Catholic Church has made its way through Latin America, and then on my mother's side, they're Irish Catholics. How does that play into what you're saying, or does it? I don't know. Yeah, I'm just exploring the idea here.
I think Christianity is going to be very important for a lot of people in the tumult that's going to very likely come in the next few generations. Uh, it's going to be a very solid foundation for a lot of people. But part of Spengler's discussion about the second religiosity is that that second religiosity tries to rebuild the religion that came before, gave rise to that civilization. But there's something that's just not whole about it. It's not, it's not that, it doesn't have that essence that it had in the beginning. It's to an extent, it's people going through the motions. Even as I say that, though, there's nothing else spiritually that's going to be a true foundation for most people. There's a lot of churches around here. Most of them are evangelical, most of them are Protestant. But
Yeah.
that's like clearly a solid foundation for the locals here. And that's going to stay that way. And that will be part of the talking about cultivating a civilization here. That will be fundamental to cultivating a new civilization here. But whatever arises, it won't be Christianity. It'll be something. It'll be if there is another empire in America at some point in the distant future, it will have its own religion. Any
Where do you
civilization.
think that might rise? Where do you think the imperial core would be? I wrote a.
think it's
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
A lot of people think it's going to be in the Midwest
Really?
because it's very geologically stable. And it's a long way from the coast, so invasion is a lot harder. You got to cross mountains to get to the Midwest. You got to travel a long ways to get to Midwest. So there's something about that. It's called the breadbasket for more reason than you grow a lot of wheat and corn and soybeans here.
Right.
Something in the soil and the ground that is like, and so Bly thought that, Robert Bly thought that, Greer has suggested that. I don't know for sure, but
Yeah, sure.
That's
But yeah, I'm
that's
looking at
the thing
that.
about
Yeah, I'm
the
looking at the
Midwest.
Mississippi River
Oh.
too. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
Midwest has access to the rest of the world, and depending on how technology goes, it's a lot easier to get out than it is to get in.
And the Great Lakes too. The Great Lakes and
Yeah.
Mississippi River and trade routes for this area for a long, long time.
Yeah. How do you feel about Texas?
Uh, well, Texas is practically its own empire at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I identified. I wrote something a few months ago where I was trying to think that through. For me, it ticked the boxes of they have that mythic history, and then they've also got, well, guns and oil.
Mm-hmm.
The two things that you're gonna need if you're gonna rule.
And a lot of hardworking
So
Hispanics.
yeah, well, and that was the other side of it, and then that's why I brought up the Catholic side of it, and then they have that unifying religion.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger being better, as far as when you're talking about empire.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there would be some competing cores that would be resolved. It would be resolved one way or another over time.
I suspect if America goes through some sort of disunion process at some
Yeah,
point,
I suspect that too.
Texas would be like core to at least one of those
Yeah.
countries. But the Midwest,
Where would things be centered around up there? Like,
but there's also oil here. We got the Bakken.
So it's I think from a historical kind of perspective, right? We have to, if you study history, you know that all nations, all empires, they break up, they split.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the borders are not
The borders move.
borders are not etched
even
in the land.
even the people,
Yeah,
even the
lines on a
people
map,
get
man.
move and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
it's not if,
yeah,
it's when, right?
Right.
And we never, sometimes we like, I think when we do these kind of conversations, and not that we're wrong whatsoever, because these are very valid, important conversations.
yeah.
But one thing that we always kind of like never bring up, because it's impossible to bring up, is the idea of like, like black swan events, well, like Alexander's,
Mm-hmm.
or Constantine's or Charlemagne's, right? Like
Mm.
we don't know, we can't predict where these people are going to come from, or who the next one's going to be that's going to radicalize everything or change everything or lead everything into a different, and that's the hard part, because you can have, you can look at countries like Greece, right? The Greeks used to be, part of the most important cultural and, spiritual empire ever. And now they're like, an unimportant kind of tourist destination, basically, eventually we might become that, or parts of us is going to become that. And we don't know, if the next Alexander, well, for all we know, it might just be somewhere in Africa. The next like center of culture is, not going to happen. But, like,
There will
or
be empires that rise all over the world for a very
right,
long time.
right. And so we don't know what we're going to look like, which is interesting, you said, when you talked about Christianity, and I find that interesting because I'm in an interesting position myself because I'm a member of a branch of Christianity that is rather alien to the United States, right?
Hmm.
It's a very fast, quickly popularizing branch, but is, infinitesimally small compared to the 150,000 separate denominations of Protestantism and the Roman
Hmm.
Catholics. And it's interesting
Yeah, how
because
many Eastern Orthodox are there in the United
oh,
States?
not a lot, not a
Really?
lot. Like let me look
Oh,
it up. Let
I'm
me
just
see.
curious.
Let me see. I can tell you right now. It's about a little bit over than 7 million Orthodox Americans in 2020.
Wow.
Right.
Huh. Yeah, that's not very
Uh,
many at all. Interesting.
right.
Which, from my
Suppose
perspective, that would be like where the energy would be if you're wanting to restore America or to find some foundation for an America that's collapsing, as opposed to the evangelical, which is more like these days like a band and a cheering section. It's like,
Oh yeah, it's entertainment
right.
in so many ways.
But one thing that we have to like, only like I said, only 1% of U.S. adults, according to Wikipedia, are identify as Orthodox Christians, right? Um, Now, a lot of those, not all of them, but a good chunk are, first or second born immigrants coming from Eastern Europe, whether they're Greek or Russian or Ukrainian, Serbs, and that kind of stuff, and their descendants, or, part of the Orthodox Church of America. Um, but so in a way, we are alien denominationally. We are alien in this country, in this land, even though we've been around a very very long time. If you actually well, we've been around since like the year 33, if you really want to be honest about it. Um, but if you drive up a little bit north from where you are, Fisto, and you visit St. Augustine, there's actually an old Orthodox church that
Oh,
uh,
no kidding.
was set here by the Greeks that were like indentured servants um, when the Spanish came and founded St. Augustine, which is, as we all know, the oldest continuous settled city in the continental United States.
I'll have to
hmm.
check that. I'll have to check that out. That's on our list of places to visit
Yeah, so we were there from the
once we
beginning. The Orthodox Church of America
yeah.
actually comes through Alaska with St. Herman of Alaska.
Of
But
course it would. Those Russians.
right, well, that's where it
Just
comes from,
kidding.
right? But
Yeah, that's fascinating to think of it like that.
But, it is in a way, what the kind of like the simplistic kind of version of orthodoxy is that the Roman Catholics added too much shit, and then the Protestants overcorrected by taking away too much shit. You know what I mean? So we're the just right, kind of in the
Yeah.
middle. Um, and there's a reason why it's attractive to people, and we can do an entire episode and conversation about that. I think it's attractive to
Yeah, we
people.
probably should. My wife's giving me side eye.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's like, get off. My wife's
Just
about to
just
get here.
just
But I think that I think we'll
dropping that
see.
off real quick.
I think we'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
I
definitely.
I like to think of myself that I'm a member of a church that's small, It's growing, it's little, it's tiny, and we're very much like the Christians living in imperial Rome before Constantine, that we are besieged. Okay. That's how I look at it. Like, remember, Christians started off in people's back bedrooms and hidden catacombs and in tiny, like, rich people's houses. And then they conquered the world. So I have faith that we can conquer the American empire, guys. All right. That's my view of it. Um, but it's not going to be in my lifetime or my children's lifetime or, ever. But ultimately, from my view, is we're not trying to conquer the American empire. We're trying to get to heaven. That's what we're trying to do. And that's not on this planet. But anyways, I gotta go. You gotta go too, Fisto. Hunter, dude, this is a wonderful conversation for you guys listening at home, man.
So much
Please
fun.
like and share Hunter's Substack. It's great. Look at this. We had a freaking wonderful conversation with a pagan, and we didn't call each other
Heck yeah.
assholes, right? Look at you. Hey, pagans, listen up. Okay, Hunter did not call me a Christ cug Jew worshiper once.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't tell anybody shut up retard.
I
didn't
know,
have
I
to
know.
invoke-
And it was
I didn't have
a,
to invoke the sacred phrase.
it
It's
was
amazing,
a wonderful
right?
conversation. And
Yeah, it really was. It was
you
really, yeah,
guys.
a lot of fun. A lot of fun, man.
if you and I work together to build a garden, I'll be happy. All right. That's that's
Yeah, definitely.
Right on.
that's what it's all about, man. So for you listeners, please like, share, and subscribe. Got a lot of more guests coming, a bunch of fantastic ones I got planned. Got some, this summer. It's summer now. We're gonna do those private group episodes. Hey, for you guys that are subscribed, hit up at that link and join us on the Telegram because we have a lot of cool conversations on there over the last few days, right? So if you're interested in joining our private Telegram, you gotta subscribe, okay? You gotta, be a paid subscriber, right? And you'll get the Telegram link, and you can join us, and you can basically join our conversation. A lot of our guests are in there, and I'm trying to invite all our previous guests into it. So I'll probably send you a link to the Telegram, Hunter, just so we can keep talking. Hunter, you're always welcome back on, okay? And it was a wonderful conversation, and I hope that may all your trees grow
Mm,
tall
me
and
too.
wide and bear beautiful fruit, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Fisto, good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Night, guys.